Chapter 4375. The sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. After solving the problem that had been troubling them for a while, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were in a good mood. They did not rush back to the Blazing Flames sect immediately. Instead, they went to the restaurant. However, they did not expect to meet someone they did not want to meet on the way. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the woman in front of her with a trace of disgust in her clear black and white eyes. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichun also looked at her. It was an unfamiliar face. He had never seen her before. However, looking at the other party's age and Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude, he had already guessed the other party's identity. This is the vice president of the Holy Assembly? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. That's right, it's her. Gong Tianfeng naturally saw Bailey Hongzhuang as well. Not only that, Xiao Rojin, who was beside her, also noticed her. Junior sister Bailey, are you going to the restaurant to eat? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao Rojin's face immediately revealed a friendly smile. Her gaze quietly fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's hands that were held together. Immediately, the smile on her face became even brighter. Yes, I didn't expect to meet senior sister so coincidentally. It's a coincidence that we met. Why don't we sit down and eat together? Xiao Rojin invited. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang could reply, Gong Tianfeng's voice had already sounded. Then there's no need. I feel disgusted when I see such a self-deprecating person, let alone eat together. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also looked at Gong Tianfeng. Her voice was cold and disdainful. Vice President, do you not have eyes? Are you using your nose to replace the function of your eyes? As soon as these words were said, Gong Tianfeng's face darkened. Anger flashed in her eyes. What nonsense are you talking about? Look at how arrogant you are. How can others see your eyes? They can only see two big nostrils. Gong Tianfeng's face changed, and her high head lowered a little. Her eyes then looked at Di Beichun. I was wondering why you didn't want to break up with him. It turns out that he's quite good-looking. Xiao by face. No wonder you like him. However, if you give up your future for a man, you will definitely regret it. At that time, even if you cry and beg me to let you join the Holy Light Assembly, I won't give you the chance. You don't have to worry about that. That day won't come. Bailey Hongzhuang retorted. For a guy like you who only looks at attributes and not people, talking about feelings is equivalent to talking nonsense. Back then, you left your husband for your so-called laughable reason, and now you feel happy? From the looks of it, you're going to spend the rest of your life alone. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xiao Rojin and the others' expressions changed. They didn't expect Bailey Hongzhuang to even bring up Gong Tianfeng's past. Darkness attribute cultivators are synonymous with depravity. My choice back then was very correct. Even now, I still feel that it was very correct. You, on the other hand, are stubborn. Sooner or later, you will regret it. Seeing that Gong Tianfeng had already integrated this view into her bones, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but shake her head. At this point, it was useless even if she said anything more. This woman was so stubborn that she wouldn't listen to anything. Chapter 4376. So what if you're of the dark attribute? Di Beichun's gaze was cold and eerie. If the dark attribute has fallen, then is your appearance an infinite radiance? Hearing Di Beichun's words, Gong Tianfeng was momentarily at a loss for words. Following that, the corners of her lips curled into a cold smile as she arrogantly said, "People of the dark attribute don't deserve to speak to me." Following Gong Tianfeng's words, one of the cultivators in the restaurant could not help but stand up and angrily said, "Who do you think you are, old woman? Did a dark attribute cultivator kill your entire family or something? Don't think that you're so great just because you're of the light attribute. Looking down on people of the dark attribute, why don't you take a look in the mirror and see who you are?" The sudden appearance of the man caused Gong Tianfeng to be stunned. Clearly, she did not expect that someone else would suddenly appear while she was talking to Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at the other party. After seeing the angry look on the other party's face, she already understood. Come to think of it, The other party must also be a dark attribute cultivator. After hearing Gong Tianfeng's ridicule, he could not help but stand up. That's right, old woman of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. You're vicious and think highly of yourself. I've long been displeased with you. You really think you're so great. Another cultivator stood up. I'm of the dark attribute. So what? What does it have to do with you? Come to think of it, we're too lazy to talk to you. We feel that it's a waste of time to talk to a person like you who reeks of stench from head to toe. After seeing this scene, the other cultivators in the restaurant could not help but whisper to each other. Although I'm not a dark attribute cultivator, the words of this vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly are really too harsh. That incident happened so long ago. Even if there's a mistake, it's the fault of those dark attribute cultivators in the past. What does it have to do with the people now? It's already very unfortunate that they haven't been able to develop well because of this. This woman's attitude is actually so exaggerated. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't be able to stand it. I think this Bailey Hongzhuang is right. This woman wants to be alone for the rest of her life. That's why she wants to break up the affectionate couple and separate others. Words of disdain and ridicule fell into Gong Tianfeng's ears. Even as stubborn as she was so angry that her hands were trembling. She was speechless for a moment. Bailey Hongzhuang, our sacred assembly will never accept you. After Gong Tianfeng said those words angrily, she looked at Xiaoruojin. Let's go. She's also she's, but she didn't expect things turn out at how it turned out. She didn't expect things, her, for her. Of it. Her. She. When she's, when she, her, to her. Don's hers are for what? Gong Tianfeng roared. As long as I'm in the sacred assembly, don't even think about joining. Bailey Hongzhuang spread out her hands and shrugged nonchalantly. We'll see. All right, we'll see. It wasn't until Gong Tianfeng left that the restaurant regained its silence. Chapter 4377. Di Beichun smiled faintly and shook his head. It's not worth it to affect my mood for such a person. Master, I'm really looking forward to seeing Gong Tianfeng's expression when Master Cheng and the president of the Holy Light Assembly agree to let you join. Xiao He gloated. Just now, she said that as long as she's here, she won't let you join. This woman is so determined. What if she fights with the president? Will it affect things? Xiaobai was a little worried. The most important thing right now was to obtain the cultivation method of the Holy Light energy. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Gong Tianfeng had said so much today. If she joined the Holy Light Assembly, it would be a heavy slap to her face. Don't worry, it won't affect things. Di Beichun held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly. Cheng Zonghao looked like he was going to win. His relationship with the president of the Holy Light Assembly should be very deep. Moreover, from his attitude when he mentioned Gong Tianfeng, he seems to be somewhat disdainful of her. If my judgment is correct, although Gong Tianfeng is the vice president, the president might not like her very much. Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. You're so sure? Di Beichun smiled mysteriously. If you don't believe me, then just wait and see. In the private room, they ordered a table of delicious food and wine. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun, and the four beasties ate happily. Xiao Xuanzi's strength had greatly improved. Previously, it had been bullied by the three beasties. Now, it finally had the right to speak for itself. Finally, it no longer had to be bullied by them. Just as they walked out of the restaurant, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun saw DeVows and Di Sudong walking towards them. These two must have heard the news and rushed over. Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her voice. Previously, they had a big conflict with Gong Tianfeng, so it was normal for DeVows and the rest to receive the news. Let's see what they want to do first. Di Beichun calmly pulled Bailey Hongzhuang behind him. His handsome face was covered with frost as he looked at DeVows. However, DeVows and Di Sudong pretended to be passing by. When they got closer, they looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Sudong with resentment. Bailey Hongzhuang, I heard that you've been rejected by the Holy Light Assembly. I thought I would be able to soar into the sky, but I didn't expect it to be useless. This is really embarrassing. DeVos had a mocking look on his face. He was already very unhappy that he had lost face in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Later on, he had been blackmailed by Bailey Hongzhuang, so one could imagine how unhappy he was. You don't have to worry about that. It wasn't easy to get rid of the poison, but you can't wait to jump around. Be careful not to get poisoned again. If that happens, it won't be something that can be resolved with 150,000 spirit stones, Bailey Hongzhuang retorted. DeVos' face fell when he heard this. This was what he didn't want to hear the most. You took the D family spirit stones, and now you're running out to have fun. You're really comfortable. D Sudong's eyes narrowed. He also wanted to know if Bailey Hongzhuang had used the D family spirit stones after such a long time. Bailey Hongzhuang and D Sudong might not have understood the purpose of their trip, but now they understood after hearing D Sudong's words. Chapter 43-78. This kind of trick is too low level. It's useless against me. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was languid, as if she was talking about something that was not worth mentioning at all. If you want to deal with me, you'd better think of some better moves first. With that, Bailey Hongzhuang held onto Di Beichen's arm and brushed past DeVos. When the cultivators present heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, their faces were filled with confusion. They did not understand what she meant. Only DeVos and Di Sudong, who had remained on the spot, understood Bailey Hongzhuang's meaning. As it turned out, Bailey Hongzhuang had already known about them and knew that they had poisoned the spiritual stones. She had even thought of a way to deal with it long ago. It was just that they were kept in the dark. They still remembered the disdain and ridicule that appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's face when she had left. Second uncle, what do we do now? DeVos' expression was extremely ugly. He did not know why, but when he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang now, he actually had the misconception that he could not defeat her. She was clearly a cultivator from the lower realm. No matter how he looked at it, he should not be a match for her. However, ever since he had arrived in Romance City, he had been defeated time and time again by Bailey Hongzhuang. Now, he no longer had his initial drive. On the contrary, whenever he saw Bailey Hongzhuang, he would lose his confidence. Di Sudong's face was also dark. He did not know what to do now either. He had thought that his plan this time was flawless, and that there would be no problems at all. However, Bailey Hongzhuang had actually cracked it. Let's go back first and think of something else, Di Sudong said in a deep voice. Second uncle, I think that Bailey Hongzhuang is really difficult to deal with. Now that she has the Blazing Flames sect and Chang Zonghao support, I think that we won't be able to take revenge at all, right? DeVos looked dispirited. He had failed again and again. Now, he didn't want to see Bailey Hongzhuang anymore. It was too much of a blow. He even felt that instead of continuing to stay here, he might as well go back. It was better than being treated as a joke by everyone. Di Sudong naturally understood DeVos' mood. In the past, DeVos had always been full of confidence. How could it be like now? To a cultivator, self-confidence was extremely important. Without self-confidence, it would be extremely detrimental to his future cultivation path. However, it was too embarrassing to go back like this. Wu Zhe, don't be disheartened. The reason why we can't deal with Bailey Hongzhuang here is because her helpers are here. It's normal that we can't deal with her. In a few days, the Raging Flame School will arrange for their cultivators to go out and train. That is a very good opportunity for us. Wen Tao's death is still unclear. We can't not avenge him. Hearing Di Wen Tao's name, DeVos' expression turned serious. He nodded heavily and said, Yes, we can't just leave like this. We still have to avenge Wen Tao. Seeing DeVos' expression, Di Sudong finally relaxed. He couldn't just go back like this. Otherwise, his clansmen would definitely say that he didn't do a good job. He would only have the face to go back if he achieved his goal. After walking for some distance, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen realized that the people from the Di family didn't chase after them. They couldn't help but look at each other and smile. It seems that they came here today for nothing else but to find out if the poison on the spirit stones worked. Chapter 43-79. The D family has been attacked time and time again, so their morale is no longer the same as before. When I saw DeVos just now, I realized that his eyes were no longer as sharp as before. No wonder he's been so well-behaved recently. D. Bachan's eyes sparkled with wisdom. He had not missed out on DeVos' performance just now. With just a simple glance, he had already discovered the problem. That's a good thing. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Speaking of which, she really did not have the time to deal with the D family now. The two of them strolled around the streets of Rome and city for a while before slowly walking back to the Fiery Flames sect. They spent most of their time cultivating and wanted to relax when they had the time. However, when they arrived at the Fiery Flames sect, they realized that the atmosphere around them was a little strange. The disciples in the sect were all looking at them strangely and whispering to each other. However, their voices were so soft that they could not hear them clearly. What's going on? Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Although there were many people who talked about them on a daily basis, it was obvious that something else had happened. However, the two of them had just returned from outside and had not stayed in the sect at all. What could have happened? Let's ask Wanyan Han and the others. Di Bachan looked calm. They could not afford to panic at a time like this. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. It seemed that all the cultivators in the sect already knew about this. She believed that Wanyan Han and Yi Haomiao, who were well-informed, would definitely know as well. However, just as the two of them were walking in, Yi Haomiao's figure happened to appear in front of them. When he saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Wanyan Han, Yi Haomiao's eyes lit up, and he immediately rushed over. I finally met you. Haomiao, what's going on? Di Bachan asked in a low voice. The vice president of the Holy Light Assembly came just now. I really have to hand it to this old woman. Why does she have to target you again and again? Yi Haomiao's face was filled with disgust and confusion. He immediately recounted what had happened. After she came, she went to find the sect master and threatened to have the sect master chase you and Bachan out. This woman keeps calling me scum. Her words are very unpleasant. Yi Haomiao frowned. I really don't know what's wrong with this vice president. No matter what, he's still the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. I'm speechless. After hearing all this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bachan couldn't help but look at each other. At this moment, they finally understood why everyone was looking at them with such strange gazes. It turned out that this was the reason. Looks like Gong Tianfeng came to the Raging Flames sect after leaving the restaurant. Di Bachan's eyes were cold as a cold light danced in the depths of his eyes. This woman really doesn't like me. Not only did she not allow me to join the Holy Light Assembly, now she wants the Raging Flames sect to chase me out. She really thinks she's so great. Her ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with disgust. She hated people who thought too highly of themselves and thought too highly of themselves. I can't understand this vice president's thoughts either. Hongzhuang, you're really unlucky to have offended her. It's said that old women who can't get married are the most troublesome. Sigh. Chapter 4380. No. Yi Haomiao shook his head. I only saw the vice president leave after looking for the master. Until now, the master hasn't said anything and Steward Wu hasn't said anything either. Now, everyone is guessing what the master's decision will be. After all, the Radiant Sacred Assembly is quite powerful. If the vice president insists on targeting you, this matter will be difficult to handle. Don't worry. Since the master hasn't said anything, it means that he won't chase us out. Di Bachan's extraordinarily handsome face was calm and certain. His long and narrow eyes were bright and wise as if they could see through everything. How can you be so sure? Yi Haomiao was startled. He had been anxious about this matter the entire time. Di Bachan was the person involved in this matter. If he was chased out of the Blazing Flames house, it would be terrible. However, Di Bachan was acting as if nothing had happened. This was simply too incomprehensible. Di Bachan chuckled when he saw Yi Haomiao's puzzled look. If the master really planned to chase us out, he would have announced it the moment Gong Tianfeng suggested it. Only then would he be able to achieve the best results. Now that Gong Tianfeng has left, the master hasn't said anything about it. This proves that he won't do it. Bachan is right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. When it came to people in power, they always knew when to maximize their benefits. Clearly, the master didn't think that a single sentence from the vice president was worth chasing them out. My master is an inscription master of the Blazing Flames house. Although he's a disciple in name, his identity as an inscription master is also very obvious. Gong Tianfeng may be a member of the Radiant Sacred Assembly, but she hasn't been of much help to the Blazing Flames house. How could the master chase my master out because of Gong Tianfeng? Baisher couldn't help but ask. Yi Haomiao came to a realization when he heard Baisher's words. He stroked Baisher's head and smiled. Baisher, you're really smart. You've even understood this. Of course. Then we can rest assured. That old hag really thinks she's so great. She actually dared to interfere with our House of Raging Flames business. Yi Haomiao smiled faintly. He finally let out a sigh of relief. However, in the next second, Yi Haomiao's expression changed. Oh no, I was so focused on talking to you that I forgot about Wanyan Han. What's wrong with senior brother Wanyan? Bailey Hongzhuang asked in confusion. Wanyan Han and I wanted to inform you as soon as we found out about this. However, you weren't in the Raging Flame school, so we couldn't find you immediately. Wanyan Han told me to stay here and wait for you guys. He really couldn't take this lying down. He has already gone to the Radiant Sacred Assembly to reason with the vice president. Let's hurry over and take a look. I think that vice president isn't some kind person either. If Wanyan Han suffers because of this, that would be terrible. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's expressions changed when they heard Yi Haomiao's words. They never thought that Wanyan Han would be so daring as to go to the Radiant Sacred Assembly alone to reason with them. It would be terrible if he was hurt because of this. Let's hurry over and take a look. Chapter 4381. The members of the Holy Light Assembly were also surprised by Wanyan Han's sudden appearance. After he arrived, he immediately announced that he was looking for Gong Tianfeng. Gong Tianfeng happened to be in the main hall. When she saw that someone was looking for her, she came out to find out what was going on. However, when she found out Wanyan Han's purpose, her expression immediately turned ugly. I know that you're the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly and have an extraordinary status. However, you've been targeting my junior sister over and over again. Don't you think it's a little too despicable? Looking at Gong Tianfeng, Wanyan Han's eyes were burning with rage. No matter what, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were his junior brothers and sisters. Since they were here, he had an obligation to take care of them. He did not have much ability in the face of a colossus like the Holy Light Assembly. However, he could not tolerate the fact that the other party was pushing him to his limits. Not only did he not allow Bailey Hongzhuang to join the Holy Light Assembly, he even wanted to make Bailey Hongzhuang leave the Raging Flames sect. Until now, he had never seen an elder go so far. Despicable. Gong Tianfeng chuckled. I don't like her. So what if I want her to disappear from Romance City? Young man, I advise you go back and stay there. Otherwise, if you make me unhappy, I'll make you leave with her. You're simply despicable and shameless. Wanyan Han's anger surged. Don't think that you're so great just because you're the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly. Just the fact that the Holy Light Assembly hired someone like you to be its vice president is already a huge failure. Gong Tianfeng's face was gloomy. She was a reputable figure after all. Being pointed at and scolded by Wanyan Han in front of the Holy Light Assembly like this, she was also embarrassed. Leave now. Otherwise, don't blame me for not showing mercy. The cold voice was full of threat. Gong Tianfeng was obviously angry. Most importantly, the nearby passers-by were looking at them. Those looks of disbelief made her feel very unhappy. Look, the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly has been stirring up a lot of trouble recently. I've already heard that after the conflict at the restaurant, the vice president went to the Blazing Flames sect and asked them to kick Bailey Hongzhuang out. That's why Bailey Hongzhuang's senior brother came here to fight for justice. The Holy Light Assembly is more peaceful when the president is around. When the president is not around, this vice president is completely running amok. Everyone shook their heads. Their impression of the Holy Assembly had always been very good. However, their impression of the Holy Assembly had changed after Gong Tianfeng's recent actions. Unless you change your mind, I won't leave just like that. Wang Yanhan's attitude was firm. Even if Gong Tianfeng's status was not ordinary, they also could not allow Gong Tianfeng to continue bullying them like this. After all, a person in a high position should be reasonable. Looking at Wang Yanhan's unyielding attitude, Gong Tianfeng's fury surged. Since you don't know how to appreciate favors, then don't blame me. In the next moment, Gong Tianfeng raised her hand and prepared to attack Wang Yanhan. Wang Yanhan was also prepared. Even though he knew that the other party's strength was far above his, he still had no intention of giving up. Chapter 4382. Hearing this familiar voice, Gong Tianfeng stopped what she was doing and looked at the person who had come. As expected, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun had both appeared. Her expression was cold, and her eyes were filled with disgust. As juniors, you have no respect for me at all. Do you expect me to treat you well? Gong Tianfeng, you're the one who came looking for trouble with us today. Originally, I didn't want to bother with an annoying person like you, but you provoked us first. After failing to provoke us and being scolded by other cultivators, you went to the Blazing Flames sect to look for trouble with us. You're already so old. Do you know how to write the word shame? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were burning and her voice was loud and sharp. She had seen many annoying people, such as Di Sudong. However, at least Di Sudong had an irreconcilable enmity with her. However, this woman in front of her was targeting her for a groundless reason and was abusing her power. It was fine if she was a real villain, but the most disgusting thing was this kind of person who pretended to be righteous on the surface but was doing shady things behind the scenes. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's merciless words, Gong Tianfeng's expression turned even uglier. Some of the cultivators who didn't know the situation looked at Gong Tianfeng differently after hearing all this. It was really hard to imagine that the vice president would do such a thing. Not only that, but the cultivators of the Holy Light Assembly also felt embarrassed. Usually, they were praised by others. They didn't expect the vice president to do such a thing that didn't fit her status. It had affected the entire Holy Light Assembly's image. I don't like you, so I'm going to chase you away, Gong Tianfeng said angrily. There are many people in this world who don't like me. Who do you think you are? Bailey Hongzhuang was furious. This person was simply shameless. As long as you dare to appear in my sight, I'll never let you have a good time. No matter which force you join, I'll get them to chase you away. In short, as long as I, Gong Tianfeng, am here, I'll make sure you have no place in Romance City. Gong Tianfeng's gaze was vicious. At this point, she was too lazy to say anything else. What she wanted was for Bailey Hongzhuang to regret it. Vice President, as long as you're still alive, you can't be too full of yourself. Leave some leeway for us to meet again in the future. If you're too aggressive, I'm afraid it won't do you any good. Di Beichun's eyes flashed with a cold light. You're just the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Behind you is the president. He's the one with the most authority. Aren't you being a little too confident with your words? Hearing this, Gong Tianfeng smiled disdainfully. I've already said this much. What can you do? In this Radiant Sacred Assembly, who dares to refute my words? In short, if I don't let Bailey Hongzhuang join the Holy Light Assembly, she can't join. If I want her to disappear from Romance City, she has to disappear. What if the president says no? Di Beichun had a look of dissatisfaction on his face. You rejected him for such a weird reason. The president might not be like you. So what if the president is here? You don't have to hope that the president will agree. If I say it's impossible, it's impossible. What arrogance! Bailey Hongzhuang sneered. You're just a vice president. You don't even put the president in your eyes. Chapter 4383. If she's not qualified, then I'm qualified, right? As soon as Gong Tianfeng finished speaking, a low and deep voice suddenly rang out. Hearing this familiar voice, Gong Tianfeng's expression suddenly changed, and she hurriedly turned around. When she saw the person behind her, her face instantly turned pale and cold sweat suddenly appeared. She hurriedly bowed. "President." Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the approximately 50 years old elder in front of her, and her eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. The man was wearing a gray-green robe and had an extraordinary and majestic bearing. At this moment, his eyes were filled with anger as he looked at Gong Tianfeng. Next to the president, Cheng Zonghao stood impressively and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a faint smile. She was secretly surprised. Previously, didn't Cheng Zonghao say that the president would only be back in 2 days? Why did he suddenly come back? Thinking of this, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Just now, Di Beichen suddenly led the topic to the president. Could it be that he already knew that the president was back and deliberately set a trap for Gong Tianfeng? Seeing the president's dissatisfied look, it was obvious that he was angry. Gong Tianfeng was so arrogant just now and completely did not put the president in her eyes. Presumably, she was going to be in trouble now. Facing Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze, Di Beichen's lips hooked into a trace of an evil smile and winked at her. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. It seemed that her guess was not wrong. Indeed, it was Di Beichen's trap. "Vice President, I didn't think that in just a short period of time, the entire guild would be turned upside down by you. Looking at your arrogance, I should give up the position of president to you, right?" Zhua Hongyan's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his voice was gloomy and filled with pressure. Gong Tianfeng's back turned cold, and she couldn't help but look at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang with resentment. At this point, how could she not understand that it was Bailey Hongzhuang who had deliberately set up a trap for her to say such outrageous words? Especially Di Beichen, this guy completely saw through everything. He knew that it would not be easy to deal with her, so he wanted to kill her with a borrowed knife. She knew it. Darkness attribute cultivators were all black-bellied. They were good at using others to do their dirty work. "Guild leader, I definitely didn't mean that. I was just spouting nonsense out of anger. Please don't take it to heart." Hong Yin sneered. "If you don't have any thoughts in your heart, even if you're talking nonsense, you wouldn't say something like that." Gong Tianfeng's expression was extremely ugly. No matter how she explained, it was obviously useless. What she had said before had completely angered Zhua Hongyan. It would not be easy for her to redeem herself. As the vice president, you were standing outside the door and arguing with a bunch of juniors. What is this? Zhua Hongyan was very unhappy. He just happened to come back first today. If he had not come back early, he would not have seen this scene. Usually, Gong Tianfeng was very capable and obedient under his command, but he never thought that she would be like this behind the scenes. Previously, when Cheng Zonghao told him about it, he did not quite believe it. Now, he understood everything. Guild leader, they were the ones who started it. Gong Tianfeng defended herself. "I've heard about what you've done on my way here. I have my own judgment on who's right and who's wrong. As the vice president, the entire Holy Light Assembly's image has been ruined by you." Chapter 4384. After being scolded by Zhua Hongyan, Gong Tianfeng was dumbfounded. She opened her mouth and wanted to say something, but she didn't know how to explain herself. Her words earlier had already made Zhua Hongyan extremely displeased. Presumably, no matter what she said now, it wouldn't change Zhua Hongyan's mind. The more she said, the more mistakes she would make. If she continued to quibble, it might worsen Zhua Hongyan's impression of her. Thinking of this, Gong Tianfeng could only endure Zhua Hongyan's anger. "President Zhua, this is Bailey Hongzhuang that I've mentioned to you before." Cheng Zonghao's face was filled with an amiable smile. Her talent is at the maximum level. Although there are some impurities, I believe that her future achievements will not be bad. To tell you the truth, there aren't many juniors that I admire, but Bailey Hongzhuang is one of them. Listening to Cheng Zonghao's words, Zhua Hongyan's eyes also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang, and a smile suddenly appeared in his eyes. "So you're Bailey Hongzhuang. Greetings, President Zhua." Bailey Hongzhuang bowed. Zhua Hongyan nodded slightly. "Along the way, Master Cheng has been praising you. I've known him for so long, and I know his temper very well. Among the younger generation, You're the only one who can receive such praise from him. I believe in his judgment. Thank you, President Zhua. Thank you, Master Cheng. Bailey Hongzhuang said humbly and secretly exchanged glances with Cheng Zonghao. She appreciated his kindness. Let's go in first. It's really inconvenient to stand outside with so many people coming and going. Zhua Hongyan smiled faintly and brushed past Gong Tianfeng. Clearly, he didn't want to bother with her. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others entered the Holy Light Assembly, Gong Tianfeng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a venomous gaze. She had heard that Cheng Zonghao wanted to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang, but she hadn't expected him to think so highly of her. He had even come to the Holy Assembly for Bailey Hongzhuang just to put in a good word for her in front of President Zhua. Greetings, Guild Leader Zhua. As soon as Zhua Hongyan appeared, the cultivators of the Holy Light Assembly bowed respectfully. After Zhua Hongyan nodded, everyone returned to normal. Master, it seems that this President Zhua has a very high reputation in the Radiant Sacred Assembly. This situation is completely different from when Gong Tianfeng was here. Xiao Hei's eyes sparkled with excitement. Initially, she was worried that the president might be in cahoots with Gong Tianfeng. However, judging from the current situation, that did not seem to be the case. Gong Tianfeng does things based on her own preferences. She doesn't make any sense. We're all smart people. Naturally, we won't respect such a person from the bottom of our hearts. It's normal for such a situation to occur. That's great. Now that President Zhua is back, the vice president won't be able to do things based on her own feelings. Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were arranged to the side. Zhua Hongyan had just returned, and there were still many things he needed to understand. At the very least, he needed to understand more about how to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang before he could make a decision. Cheng Zonghao also left. Before he left, he gave them a look, indicating that he would take care of everything and there was no need to worry. Little junior sister, I didn't expect your relationship with Master Cheng to be so good. Master Cheng has been speaking up for you. Chapter 4385. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Grandmaster Cheng is indeed a good person. Senior brother Wan Yin, it's too dangerous for you to come here alone to reason with Gong Tianfeng. Di Beichen's expression was grave. If they hadn't come at the right time, the consequences would have been unimaginable if Gong Tianfeng had attacked Wan Yinhan. With Gong Tianfeng's character, he didn't doubt that she would have killed him if they had fought just now. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression also turned grave. Beichen is right. Senior brother, you were too impulsive just now. This is related to your safety. Although there was some blame in his words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were touched. Wan Yinhan was willing to disregard his own safety for them. It was clear that he truly cared for them. Hearing their words, Wan Yinhan smiled and shrugged his shoulders. Isn't everything fine now? The vice president's previous actions were too much. If we had allowed her to continue causing trouble, your position in the Raging Flame School would have been in jeopardy. I had to stop her. Senior brother, thank you. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black eyes sparkled with gratitude. Her voice was gentle, but she remembered Wan Yinhan's kindness in her heart. You're all really unpredictable. Yi Hao Miao sighed. My heart almost jumped out of my chest when I followed you. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but smile when they heard Yi Hao Miao's words. Their actions were crazy in many people's eyes, but they were slowly closing the gap between them. This vice president isn't a good person. With her around, it won't be easy for you to join the Radiant Sacred Assembly. Even if you do join, I'm sure she'll find ways to stop you. Wan Yinhan frowned. He hadn't met Gong Tianfeng before, but he knew a little about her from other people. After meeting her today, he realized that she was a completely unreasonable woman. Everything he said to her was nonsense. If it wasn't for the fact that little junior sister needed the cultivation method of the light attribute, it would have been better if she didn't join the Holy Light Assembly. I know. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent, but the light in her eyes became sharper. She will indeed try to stop me, but I can also think of a way. Just like today, wasn't she also tricked by us? As long as we continue to fight, it's hard to say who will emerge victorious. Her delicate and perfect face was overflowing with confidence, and her pair of beautiful eyes were sharp. Facing Gong Tianfeng, she was not afraid at all. The worst that could happen was to leave the Holy Light Assembly. This woman couldn't think of any other way. As long as Hong Zhuang can obtain the light attribute cultivation method, it's already a good thing. As for the rest, it doesn't matter. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang with a gentle expression. Currently, the biggest obstacle was the lack of cultivation methods. As for the rest, it was nothing more than cultivation resources. On the contrary, they didn't care about this the most. Wang Yanhan, don't worry. Look at how insightful Di Beichen and Hong Zhuang are. In fact, I also think that they're right. As long as we can obtain the cultivation method, we don't care about the rest. No matter how bad it is, it won't be worse than now. On the contrary, if we cause trouble and make Gong Tianfeng unhappy, then it'll be considered as interest. Chapter 4386. Just as Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others were waiting, Xiao Rojin walked in from the outside. Seeing Bailey Hong Zhuang and the others, Xiao Rojin's expression froze. She blinked, as if wondering if she had seen wrongly. After confirming that she was not mistaken, Xiao Rojin couldn't help but walk over and pretended to be concerned. Junior Sister Bailey, why are you here? I've already heard about what happened in the sect before. The vice president has such a temper, but you coming here now will only make things worse. Why don't I think of a way to help you ask? You should go back first. No need. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled lightly, but she sneered in her heart. If Xiao Rojin really wanted to help her, with her relationship with Gong Tianfeng, it would have already had a certain effect. How could it be getting worse and worse like now? Junior Sister Bailey, I'm doing this for your own good. You should know the vice president's power. If she doesn't want you to stay in Rome and City, she can definitely do it. It's not a wise decision for you to go against her like this. As she spoke, Xiao Rojin couldn't help but look at Di Beichen, her eyes rippling. Junior Brother Di, you should stop Junior Sister Bailey. Di Beichen glanced at Xiao Rojin lazily and said indifferently, Senior Sister, you don't have to worry about this matter. President Zhua has already returned and is now dealing with this matter. As soon as these words came out, Xiao Rojin couldn't help but be stunned. What did you say? Senior Sister Xiao, although the vice president's power is not small, in Rome and City, there will always be people with higher status than her. For example, President Zhua, don't you think so? Yi Hao Miao chuckled, but there was coldness in the depths of his eyes. Xiao Rojin nodded with a slightly embarrassed expression. Yes, that's great. I'll go take a look at the situation. It would be best if I could help Junior Sister Bailey. Looking at Xiao Rojin's somewhat flustered back, Bailey Hong Zhuang's lips curled up slightly. Senior Sister Xiao is really busy every day. Hong Zhuang, don't believe this Xiao Rojin. Her gentleness and kindness may have fooled many people, but she couldn't fool us. One of the people I knew before was her follower, so I have a good understanding of her character. If I really believe that she is as gentle and kind as she appears to be, then it will be over. Yi Hao Miao looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang and reminded her seriously. I understand. Just as Xiao Rojin was about to go upstairs, Zhuo Hongyan and the others came down. At the same time, Gong Tianfeng also walked out from the other side. Previously, Zhuo Hongyan had asked others to understand what had happened during this period of time and did not ask her. At this moment, she also wanted to know what decision the president would make. Zhuo Hongyan walked to Bailey Hong Zhuang's side with a face full of smiles and said, Miss Bailey, I formally invite you to join the Holy Light Assembly. As soon as this was said, some people were happy, while others were worried. Bailey Hong Zhuang smiled. Thank you, President Hua. Cheng Zonghao, who was standing beside Zhuo Hongyan, was also full of smiles. If he said that there would be no problem, there would naturally be no problem. President, Gong Tianfeng said in dissatisfaction, looking anxious. She had previously said that as long as she was in the Holy Light Assembly, she would not let Bailey Hong Zhuang join. Now that the president had made such a decision, wasn't this a slap to her face? You don't have to say anything more. I already know the whole story. Zhua Hongyin's face was cold, and he did not intend to say anything more to Gong Tianfeng. President, but I've already rejected her joining. If you do this, Chapter 4387. Zhua Hongyin's words shut Gong Tianfeng's mouth immediately. For a moment, Gong Tianfeng's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, but she could only glare hatefully at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Miss Bailey, you'll be a member of the Holy Light Assembly from now on. Don't worry, you'll be treated fairly here. I hope you'll have a good future. Thank you, President Zhua. Bailey Hongzhuang bowed and thanked him. Zhua Hongyin waved his hand. I just found out that Miss Bailey is already an inscription master at such a young age. Speaking of this, you're not simple at all. There's no need for you to bow to me. You're the president. It's only right for me to do so. The smile on Zhua Hongyin's face widened. No wonder Master Chung keeps recommending you. You're really an excellent young man. After returning from the Holy Light Assembly, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were in a good mood. Did you see the vice president's expression just now? I tried my best not to laugh. It's just too funny, huh? Yi Hao Miao couldn't help but laugh after walking some distance away from the Holy Light Assembly. His loud laughter caused Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to chuckle as well. I saw it. Thinking back to her arrogant face just now, I felt so relieved just now. Now that I've obtained the cultivation method of light energy, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Bailey Hongzhuang breathed a sigh of relief. Now that she had obtained the most important thing, she didn't have to worry about anything else. Di Beichan held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand. If you're unhappy to see Gong Tianfeng, you don't have to go to such a place. I'm fine. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. If I'm unhappy, she'll be even more unhappy than I am. As soon as they returned to the Blazing Flames Gate, Wu Wenfeng appeared in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang, you already know about what happened just now, right? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Just as she was about to tell Wu Wenfeng about it, the latter spoke first. Don't worry, the sect master has already said that he won't pay any attention to that vice president. If you stay in a Raging Flame school, no one will be able to drive you out. You don't have to worry about this. Do you understand? Wu Wenfeng looked a little nervous, obviously worried that Bailey Hongzhuang would misunderstand. Manager Wu, thank you. Sect leader, and thank you. I'm now a member of the Holy Light Assembly. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was gentle. The situation was just as Di Beichan had expected, but she was still pleasantly surprised. What did you say? Wu Wenfeng was stunned. He only suspected that he had misheard. I said, I have already joined the Holy Light Assembly. How is that possible? Wu Wenfeng was dumbfounded. The vice president has always been against you. Why would he suddenly change his mind? President Zhua is back. He was the one who asked me to join, so you don't have to worry about me anymore. I see. That's great. No matter what, Manager Wu, I'm very grateful to you. Hee. Wu Wenfeng chuckled. Then I'm relieved. Cultivate well. President, you really didn't give us any face today. Gong Tianfeng looked at Zhua Hongyin in front of her with a complicated expression. Chapter 4388. President, that's not what I meant. Gong Tianfeng defended herself. Her husband is a max-level dark attribute cultivator, and that's why I rejected her. Moreover, according to my understanding during this period of time, this Bailey Hongzhuang thinks highly of herself and doesn't know what modesty and politeness are. If she joins the Holy Light Assembly, she will definitely cause a lot of trouble. Vice President, whether you have any selfish motives for doing this, both you and I know very well. It's nothing more than the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang poking at your sore spot, so you're like this. However, I hope you understand that you are the Vice President of the Holy Light Assembly, and your purpose is to let the Holy Light Assembly have a better development and recruit young people with potential. This is our goal. I originally thought that you were already able to take charge, but now it seems that your ability is still not enough. So my original intention of recommending you to be the president has been dispelled. For the time being, you should just be the vice president. Following Zhua Hongyin's words, Gong Tianfeng's expression suddenly changed. President, you can't do this to me. I want to rest. You can go out. President, get out. Not far away. Xiao Rojin looked at Gong Tianfeng, who walked out of the president's office, and her eyes became complicated and deep. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang was unable to join the Holy Light Assembly, so she didn't take it to heart. Now that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the cultivation method of light energy, and the president seemed to think highly of her, if she didn't make more preparations, she was afraid that it wouldn't work. A max-level light attribute cultivator, I have to report this matter back to the family first. Xiao Rojin secretly decided. Their Xiao family had always produced light attribute cultivators, but other than the proud daughter of the main family, who had reached the max level of talent, no one else had appeared. According to her understanding, the proud daughter of the main family wasn't really at the max level, but she was still lacking something, but everyone had already determined that she was the next Holy Light Assembly's Holy Light Assembly. Although this Bailey Hongzhuang had some impurities, according to everyone's judgment, she was at the max level of talent. If Bailey Hongzhuang could not cultivate the power of light, it would be fine. But now that she could, everything had changed. Therefore, she had to send this news back. Otherwise, if something went wrong, she wouldn't be able to bear the responsibility. After sending Steward Wu off, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun began to study the cultivation method of light energy. Looking at the cultivation manual in her hand, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. I thought I wouldn't know when I would be able to get this cultivation method. I didn't expect it to be solved so easily. It's much better than I thought. Wife, you've always been a blessed person. Di Beichun smiled faintly and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang dotingly. Today's matter had finally allowed Hongzhuang to let out a sigh of relief. After flipping through the contents of the manual, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. Sure enough, no matter how many changes there are, it's still the same. After careful analysis, the cultivation method of light energy and darkness energy is still related. Immediately after, Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichun, Bai Shi, and Xiao He began to try to cultivate the power of light. Ordinary cultivators only had one attribute, but they had two. Chapter 43:89. If they did not put in double the effort, they would definitely not be stronger than cultivators of the same attribute. On the contrary, they might even be weaker. This was not a situation that they wanted to see. Time passed very quickly while they were cultivating. In the blink of an eye, night had fallen. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had converted the origin energy in their bodies into light energy, Di Beichun and Bai Shi were shocked to find that their dantians had been occupied by black and white. Originally, these two types of origin energy should be completely opposite. However, at this moment, they were both in their dantians. Not only did they not show any signs of conflict, on the contrary, the two seemed to be fusing into one. Noticing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were somewhat puzzled. According to the common understanding of the world, these two types of energy are completely opposite. Why would they fuse into one in our bodies? Her ink-black phoenix eyes flashed with a thick light of confusion. It had to be said that this situation was somewhat illogical and could not be understood at all. Di Beichun was also deep in thought. Perhaps everyone's understanding of light and darkness are not completely opposite. Perhaps things will move in the opposite direction when they reach an extreme. Sometimes, such an unexpected situation will occur. However, it's a good thing that there is no conflict. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Previously, I was worried that these two types of energy would clash with each other in our bodies. When that happens, our bodies would become a battlefield. Just thinking about it, I know how uncomfortable that situation would be. I never thought that it would be so natural. I think it's very likely that the cultivators in the past did not know about this. Or perhaps someone knew, but did not mention it. After all, there are not many cultivators who possess both the darkness and light attributes other than us. Perhaps there are none at all. Di Beichun's voice was low and his eyes were filled with wisdom. All of this was a new discovery that they had made. What you said makes sense. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Let's continue to cultivate. Once we have a better understanding of these two powers, perhaps we will know more. However, while Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqian were talking, Xiao He and Xiao Bai wailed at the same time. Upon hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately turned to look at Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were lying limply on the ground. They were clutching their heads with both hands, and their expressions were hideous. It was obvious that they were in great pain. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, what's wrong with you guys? Bailey Hongzhuang's face was quickly filled with worry. She didn't understand why such a situation would suddenly occur when everything was fine just now. Master, my head hurts. Xiao He rolled on the ground. Her voice was extremely weak. In such great pain, it was extremely difficult for her to even speak. My head, why did it suddenly become like this? I can't take it anymore. Xiao Bai's situation wasn't much better than Xiao He's. The intense pain seemed to come from the depths of their souls, making it impossible for them to hide. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly stepped forward and grabbed Xiao He's hand. She began to examine it carefully. Wife, what's the situation? Master, how are they? Di Beiqian and Bai Shi asked in concern. This sudden situation was simply too worrying. Chapter 4390. It's so strange. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. Xiao He's pulse is normal. There's nothing wrong with it. It's the same for Xiao Bai. Upon hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment, Di Beiqian also frowned. He naturally believed in Bailey Hongzhuang's judgment. Then, the problem lay with Xiao He and Xiao Bai themselves. Could the situation this time be similar to the last time Xiao Bai appeared? Di Beiqian asked. Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it and nodded. It's possible. However, Xiao Bai's pulse was very strange last time. But this time, there's nothing wrong with their pulses. I can only say that although they feel intense pain now, it has no effect on their bodies. According to what you said, the problem should lie with Xiao He and Xiao Bai themselves. Wife, you still don't know why they appeared in the Chaos Ring, and you don't know what kind of contract beasts they are, right? I really don't know why they appeared in the Chaos Ring, and I don't know when they appeared. However, I already know their names now. They're the Black and White Light Spirits. This is the information I got from the White Dragon. However, the White Dragon's own memory is not very complete. When I asked her about the details, she was already confused. Bailey Hongzhuang spread her hands. It was not easy to find a White Dragon, but in the end it was still useless. It was really a pity. Perhaps this incident is also an opportunity for number 1 high school. Di Beiqian said slowly. After Xiao Bai's situation last time, she formed a contract with me. This time, Xiao He and Xiao Bai have headaches at the same time. There should be a reason for this. When they calm down, we may find out the connection. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. However, there was still some sympathy in her eyes when she looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai. From their expressions, it was obvious that they were in extreme pain. An hour later, Xiao He and Xiao Bai fell into a coma. Bailey Hongzhuang checked them again and found that they were indeed not in danger. Everything was normal. After such an incident, they were not in the mood to continue cultivating. They just stayed by Xiao He and Xiao Bai's side, waiting for them to wake up. They were in a coma. They were unconscious for 3 days. When Xiao He and Xiao Bai woke up, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beiqian, Bai Shi, and Xiao Xuanzi as soon as they opened their eyes. How do you feel? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with concern. Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at each other and suddenly said, We've recovered some of our memories. The 2 people and 2 beasts were stunned when they heard this. They looked at Xiao He and Xiao Bai in surprise. What did you say? Bailey Hongzhuang was surprised. Recovered some of your memories? Xiao He and Xiao Bai nodded in unison. Yes, we know the cultivation method. In the next moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai explained their situation in detail. After listening to everything, everyone finally understood. After the previous pain, some of their lost memories came back. These memories included the cultivation method of the light and dark powers. Chapter 4391. According to what you've said, Xiao He and Xiao Bai's attributes should have been fixed long ago. That's why they have such memories in their minds. However, these two completely contradictory powers mean that they were taught by two cultivators of different attributes. But why are Xiao He and Xiao Bai together? Bailey Hongzhuang had a complicated expression on her face. After understanding all of this, the situation behind this seemed even stranger. Could it be that everything had been fixed in the unseen world? Or Xiao He and Xiao Bai's previous master had already calculated the future? If that was the case, then it was a little too terrifying. I think your guess is right. Di Beichen's voice was slightly heavy. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's previous master was probably not simple. He mastered the cultivation method of the two attributes of darkness and light. Perhaps he was a dual attribute cultivator like us. If that's the case, perhaps this was the reason why the Chaos Ring chose you as its master. I believe that a divine artifact would not choose a master so casually. There must be a reason behind this. Bailey Hongzhuang fell silent. She originally thought that her transmigration was just an accident. However, according to Di Beichen's analysis, it seemed that there were many things that they did not understand at all. If that's the case, the secret of the Chaos Ring was only revealed after we came to the upper realm. That's possible. Di Beichen nodded. Wife, you don't have to worry. I believe that Xiao He and Xiao Bai must know what happened in the past. Although they've only recovered a part of their memories, since they've begun to recover, it means that they might remember everything in the future. When that time comes, we'll definitely know the truth. At this moment, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also nodded repeatedly. Master, we'll try our best to remember. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and patted the two little fellows' heads. Don't break your heads over this matter. It's not a big deal. We'll find out sooner or later. What's the big deal if it's a little later? Anyway, we're all doing well now. Even if we don't know, it doesn't matter. Xiao He and Xiao Bai leaned against Bailey Hongzhuang and happily rubbed against her. We knew that master is the best. Since you've thought of the cultivation method in your minds, then tell us about it. We'll see if there's any difference. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were contracted beasts from many years ago. Their memories might be different from now. What I remember is exactly the same as what Master said. There is no difference. Little White looked at Di Beichen and took the lead to speak. What about Xiao He? The content that I remember is different. Then, Xiao He began to recount everything that it remembered. After listening to everything, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. They immediately noticed the difference. I'm afraid that this is the true cultivation method of the power of light, Bailey Hongzhuang said. That's right. Xiao He's description sounds more complete. In comparison, the cultivation method that we're seeing now seems to be a simplified version. According to what you said, Beichun, the inheritance of darkness that you previously obtained is indeed the true essence. Bailey Hongzhuang was relieved. The inheritance was the same as the one in Xiao Bai's mind. It was obvious that it was the inheritance of the origin. Chapter 4392. No, this isn't a coincidence. Bailey Hongzhuang's jet-black eyes flickered with a lively luster as she spoke with certainty. Previously, she still could not understand it. However, after learning that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had regained part of their memories, she finally understood. What do you mean? The reason Xiao He and Xiao Bai have regained part of their memories is because the power in their bodies has already transformed into the power of darkness and light. From a moment they completed the transformation, part of their sealed memories began to recover. I believe that their memories have been sealed. Only by encountering some opportunities can these seals be broken. If we can find these opportunities in the future, I believe that Xiao He and Xiao Bai will gradually remember everything that happened in the past. She had heard of such situations before. However, she did not expect it to happen in front of her eyes. However, just from this method alone, she could tell that Xiao He and Xiao Bai's previous master was not an ordinary person. I see. Di Beichen understood. In that case, it's only a matter of time before they regain their memories. 7 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others officially received a notice to head to the demonic dragon abyss for training. Little junior sister, junior brother D, we're leaving today. Have you prepared everything? Wang Yanhan smiled. Ever since the matter of Bailey Hongzhuang joining the Holy Light Assembly was resolved, he had nothing to worry about. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. We're all ready. That's good. There are a total of 50 cultivators going on this trip. It's quite a large number. You can come with me and Yi Hao Miao so that we could take care of each other. No problem. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other and smiled. Although they were familiar with many of the cultivators going on this trip, they basically did not have any friendship with them. They could encounter danger at any time in the demonic dragon abyss. Under such circumstances, it was best for them to be with someone they could trust. Seeing the appearance of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, everyone's expression suddenly became a bit complicated, and more of them became envious. This Bailey Hongzhuang is really amazing. Even the vice president of the Radiant Sacred Assembly said that she wouldn't be allowed to join. I didn't expect her to become a member of the Radiant Sacred Assembly in the end. I really admire her now. She's simply a genius. I thought she wouldn't have a chance in the future. Who would have thought that things would turn around in the end? Life is truly unpredictable. I've asked around. It's all because of Master Cheng's help. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang had a good relationship with Master Cheng. Otherwise, it would be impossible for her to join the Holy Assembly. No way. In the blink of an eye, Bailey Hongzhuang became the envy of everyone again. Master, these people's opinions change so quickly. They were laughing at you before, and now they're envious of you. Xiaohei couldn't help but shake her head and sigh. The human world was really complicated. The most difficult thing to understand was the human heart. There are a lot of people in this world who are easily swayed. Don't pay attention to them. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was calm and indifferent. She had long been used to these things. No matter how others looked at her, she didn't care. After everyone gathered, Wang Yanhan, as the leader, led everyone in the direction of the demonic dragon abyss. The demonic dragon abyss was located in a mountain range not far from Rome and city. However, it was a relatively special area. Chapter 4393. The group of 50 people set off. Due to the large number of people, they were divided into 5 groups of 10 people each. Wang Yanhan was the leader of the group. Other than him, there were 4 other vice leaders. This expedition to the demonic dragon abyss had too many people. The possibility of exploring together was not high, so it was more convenient to split into 5 groups. Just as the cultivators of the Inferno School were moving, the cultivators of the other forces were also moving. There was an unfamiliar situation in the demonic dragon abyss. Perhaps there was an opportunity, or perhaps it was hell. Everyone was filled with curiosity. I heard that apart from the Inferno School, the cultivators of the Azure Dragon School also set off on the same day. However, they took a different route from us. We must have taken a different route on purpose. Otherwise, we might have fought on the way. Haha, that's true. We have always been on bad terms with the Azure Dragon School. As long as we meet, we will inevitably cause trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun walked in the group. Her gaze immediately fell on Xiao Rojin, who was not far away. Xiao Rojin is the vice leader this time. It seems that senior brother Wang Yan is really valued in the Inferno School. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun. She originally thought that if Xiao Rojin joined, the leader would definitely be her. Xiao Rojin has such a position because she is a cultivator of the light attribute. Secondly, it is because of the Xiao family behind her. In terms of combat strength and leadership, senior brother Wang Yan is more outstanding, Di Beichun said slowly. You are right. Even when she is out training, Xiao Rojin is still like the moon surrounded by stars. Speaking of which, there are probably many people in her small group who exist to protect her. If something happens to her, the Inferno School will be in trouble. The Xiao family was not a small family like the Di family. Just the Di family alone would be troublesome, let alone a huge family like the Xiao family. Even if Xiao Rojin was only a member of the Xiao family's branch family, she was backed by the real Xiao family. The Inferno School would definitely not dare to offend her. Actually, it's just a show. If she wants to maintain her position in the House of Raging Flames, she naturally has to participate. Di Beichun looked indifferent. He had never felt anything for Xiao Rojin. As long as the other party did not provoke them, it did not matter. This time, Steward Wu wanted you to be the vice captain. Why did you refuse? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and looked at Di Beichun. Before they were about to set off, Steward Wu had specially communicated with them about this matter. Although Di Beichun had just joined the House of Raging Flames, everyone knew of his strength. There was no problem for him to become the vice captain. I'm not interested in such a thankless task. The corners of Di Beichun's lips curled up slightly. If I have the time to lead a team, I might as well train with you alone. It'll save me the trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but chuckle. I've heard that many cultivators have racked their brains to fight for the position of vice captain. I didn't expect you to have no interest at all. If this were to spread, I'm afraid many people would be speechless. They all want to develop well in the House of Raging Flames, so they are racking their brains. However, neither you nor I have such plans, so why should we fight with them? Chapter 4394. You're right. If we don't fight for these benefits, we'll have less trouble. Bailey Hongzhuang was also a clever person. Naturally, she understood what Di Beichun meant. The reason they stayed here was to wait for Xiren, Ao Ling Xiao, and the others to arrive. As long as they met up with Xiren and the others, they would leave Rome and city. I wonder what realm Xiren and Ying have broken through. I really hope they can break through to the Starlight Realm as soon as possible. Then, they'll be able to meet up with us. Bailey Hongzhuang's pretty face revealed some longing. Unknowingly, they had been in the upper realm for some time. When they separated by accident, she had long gotten used to having them by her side. Now that it was just her and Di Beichun, she felt that something was missing. With Xiren and Ying's talents, it should be soon, Di Beichun said after some thought. Right now, I just hope that they can arrive at Rome and city directly. That would be the best situation. Otherwise, it won't be easy to meet up with them. Xiren and the others are smart people. Since I can find you, I believe they can find us as well. It'll just take some time. Di Beichun's thin rose-colored lips curled up. He and Xiren had been brothers for so many years, so they knew each other very well. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. That's great. The group rushed all the way to the demonic dragon abyss. Along the way, they also met some small teams that were also exploring the demonic dragon abyss. However, compared to their huge team, they were not worth mentioning. Even in the mountains, the monsters seemed to know that such a huge team was not easy to bully. They did not even attack them. Under such circumstances, the group speed was also extremely fast. However, as they got closer and closer to the demonic dragon abyss, they discovered that a dark aura was gradually becoming more obvious. This demonic dragon abyss is filled with the aura of dark power. Could it be that the dark power here is awakening? The upper realm of the dark side has been silent for a long time. Some of the places that appeared in the past have been cleared out by everyone. Logically speaking, it shouldn't appear again, right? That's not necessarily true. There have always been a lot of dead people. If the power of darkness appears in this place, then these things can easily turn into skeletons. It's said that this was the case in those places in the past. Everyone couldn't help but frown when they noticed the increasingly gloomy environment. This kind of place really made people feel uncomfortable. Of course, except for Di Beichun and the others. Back when I was in the lower plane, I also felt very sad when I first headed to the training grounds. But now, looking at this situation, I don't feel that way at all. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head to look at Di Beichun. At this moment, she actually felt very comfortable in this kind of environment. Moreover, the dark attribute energy in the air was constantly fusing into her body. Her cultivation method automatically circulated, and her cultivation speed was much faster than usual. This should be because we've awakened the darkness attribute. Di Beichun said slowly. The dark attribute energy in my body is circulating much faster. My power is quickly filling up, and I'm in an excellent state. Originally, after such a long journey, their state should have been slightly affected. However, after arriving here, he found that his state was rapidly recovering. Chapter 4395. From the looks of it, this should be the advantage of a tribute awakening. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. Before their attributes awakened, they would not have any advantage in this place filled with dark aura. Now that they were here, their strength had increased by quite a bit. If they had already awakened their talents when they were in the lower realm, then their performance in the training grounds would definitely be much better than before, and they would not be forced to come to the upper realm. Master, but my strength is suppressed here. Xiao Hei's little face fell as it spoke faintly. It was the only one with a light attribute here. Ever since it came here, it felt that its aura was suppressed, and this feeling was much more uncomfortable than outside. As Xiao Hei's voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichen looked at each other and immediately understood the situation better. Attributes can be restrained. When there is more of a certain element in the surrounding environment, the opposite element will be restrained. Deep Beichen's voice was low and magnetic. Many questions could be understood just by thinking about it carefully. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. According to this, if we have these two opposing attributes at the same time, doesn't that mean that we won't be suppressed? Deep Beichen nodded. You can say that. In a place filled with other elements. Although it will increase the strength of cultivators of the same attribute, our strength will not be affected or restrained. Then, this is a huge advantage. Although this point did not seem to be useful for the time being, in some specific environments, this was a huge advantage. Now, only Xiao Xuanzi has not awakened its talent. I wonder what attribute Xiao Xuanzi will have. Will it have the same dark attribute as Master? Xiao Bai looked at Xiao Xuanzi at the side. This little guy's strength had not been long since it was born. Although its strength had improved tremendously, it was still some distance away from them. Fortunately, Long Yanwei had helped Xiao Xuanzi speed up its growth. It would not be long before it could awaken its talent. There is such a possibility. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. When the time comes, Xiao Xuanzi will definitely awaken his talent together with Yingying and the other's contracted beasts. After Xiao Rojin felt the dark aura of the demonic dragon abyss, her face became very ugly. She did not expect the environment of the demonic dragon abyss to restrain her so much. In this place full of dark aura, she could hardly feel any light element. Her strength's recovery was extremely slow, and she felt uncomfortable all over her body. Although the other cultivators felt a little uncomfortable, it was only a feeling. In fact, it was not much. Xiao Rojin could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang at the back. However, she found that Bailey Hongzhuang's as if she did not feel the attribute suppression here. She slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, her face full of concern. Junior Sister Bailey, us light attribute cultivators are suppressed here. You should also feel uncomfortable, right? This is very normal. You don't have to hide it. Later, you will stay with the team. Don't put too much effort into the exploration because our light energy recovers very slowly here. We won't be able to replenish it. Chapter 4396. Senior Sister Xiao is really gentle and kind. She's so nice to the new Junior Sister. I wonder who will be able to pursue Senior Sister Xiao. That would be such a blessing. Indeed, Senior Sister Xiao and Junior Sister Bailey are both favored by the heavens. It's just that Junior Sister Bailey is already married, but Senior Sister Xiao is not. As long as you can pursue her, you will have a meteoric rise from then on. In this situation, only Di Beichun is the most comfortable among us. He is of the darkness attribute, so he is naturally the most comfortable in this place. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun are really not suitable. One is comfortable, and the other is uncomfortable. For a moment, everyone looked at Di Beichun with complicated gazes. The darkness attribute was originally an attribute that was despised by everyone. Looking at the desolate darkness around them, they couldn't help but feel depressed. Bailey Hongzhuang found that after Xiao Rojin said this, everyone actually began to ostracize Di Beichen. She couldn't help but frown. Although Xiao Rojin hadn't provoked her so far, the words she had caused at this moment were enough to make her unhappy. Senior Sister Xiao, I don't feel uncomfortable. I'm already used to such an environment when I was in the lower realm. Bailey Hongzhuang's cold voice was filled with alienation. She looked at Xiao Rojin coldly. As soon as these words came out, Xiao Rojin's expression couldn't help but change a little. How can that be? How can it not be? Bailey Hongzhuang asked back. Senior Sister Xiao, do I look like I'm uncomfortable? Hearing this, everyone's gazes couldn't help but fall on Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Rojin. With this look, everyone found that, as Bailey Hongzhuang said, she didn't look uncomfortable at all. On the contrary, Xiao Rojin's discomfort was written all over her face. This is strange. Both of them are of the light attribute. How can their reactions be so different? Maybe it's because Senior Sister Xiao has always been spoiled and rarely goes out. This is her first time coming to a place like this, so she's not used to it. Perhaps it's because Senior Sister Zhao's attribute talent isn't as good as Bailey Hongzhuang's, so the situation is different. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's attributes are maxed out. This is naturally different from ordinary cultivators. Xiao Rojin looked at the smiling face in front of her. She really wanted to tear it apart. Originally, she just felt that she was a little uncomfortable and felt that she had lost face. She wanted to use Bailey Hongzhuang to find a way out. She didn't expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would not only not give her a way out, but also leave her hanging. However, looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's appearance, she did not seem to be uncomfortable at all. On the contrary, it seemed that everything here did not affect her at all. Seeing this, Xiao Rojin looked at her gloomily and thought, if you have the ability, keep pretending like this. I don't believe that you will be completely unaffected in such an environment. The more indifferent you act now, the more embarrassed you will be when you are exposed later. Xiao Rojin left unhappily. Bailey Hongzhuang, on the other hand, looked at Di Beichun happily. Beichun, don't you think the environment here is very similar to a training ground? If only this was a training ground, then we could meet up with Ying and the others. At this time, Wang Yanhan also walked over. Junior Sister, what are you talking about? We're talking about the environment here is very similar to the training ground in the lower realm. Chapter 4397. Following Wang Yanhan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were confused. Senior, what do you mean? Actually, I heard it from someone else. Wang Yanhan smiled, but his tone was uncertain. Isn't the entrance from the lower realm to the upper realm in the training grounds? In fact, I was just like you when you first came here. I wanted to go back and meet Wang Yanling. So, I also inquired about some information in this regard. I heard that the training grounds are directly connected to the upper realm, but the distance is very far and the direction can't be determined. If you encounter a place like that in the upper realm, it's very likely that it's connected to the lower realm. Based on what you said, this place might be connected to the lower realm. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes lit up. If that was the case, then it would be great. Wang Yanhan chuckled. Even if the two are connected, we can't reach the lower realm. No one knows how far the two places are. Moreover, it's such a big place, and we can't be sure of the direction. If I could, I would have gone back long ago. You're right. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Her pretty face had a trace of helplessness. If she could, she really wanted to meet up with Shangguaning Ying and the others as soon as possible. Of course, there was also Ao Lingxiao. As long as Ao Lingxiao was there, they could also set off for the Di family. They didn't have to stay here all the time. The demonic dragon abyss appeared suddenly, so we don't know what's going on. You guys must follow the team closely and don't act recklessly. There might be some unknown danger here. Wang Yanhan warned. We understand. The group walked all the way into the demonic dragon abyss. The deeper they went, the thicker the dark aura became. Everywhere they looked was dark, but the surroundings were dead silent. Nothing existed. Previously, when they were outside, they met many other teams who were also exploring. However, as they went deeper into the abyss, the other teams gradually disappeared around them. Beichen, I don't know why, but I feel like someone is following us. Bailey Hongzhuang abruptly turned her head to look behind her, but there was nothing behind her. She frowned suspiciously. She had been having this feeling for quite a while, but she had never noticed it. Even she herself was a little doubtful whether this was an illusion or real. Hearing this, Steve Beichen also looked behind him. It was really hard to hide in such a place. When did you start to feel this way? Steve Beichen might not take it seriously if someone else said it, but he believed that Bailey Hongzhuang had such a feeling. It has been quite a while since we entered the demonic dragon abyss. There's clearly no one behind us, but I keep feeling like there are eyes staring at us. No matter what, we have to be careful. Di Beichen said in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Okay. Xiao Rojin only felt more and more uncomfortable in such an environment. She quietly turned around to look at Bailey Hongzhuang, but found that the latter was just as she said before. Her expression was natural, as if there was nothing wrong at all. Chapter 4398. Xiao Rojin was full of doubts. She couldn't help but think of everyone's previous guess. Could it be that it was really like what everyone said, that it was because Bailey Hongzhuang's talent had reached the max level? It was said that cultivators with max-level talent would indeed be much stronger than ordinary cultivators. However, she wasn't very clear about where this was reflected in. According to this explanation, all of this was not impossible. If it was really like this, Xiao Rojin bit her lower lip. The dissatisfaction in her eyes became more and more intense. This Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely become an existence that would threaten her. The curtain of night slowly descended, causing the land that was already dyed black to become even darker. Everyone stopped one after another and found a place to sit down and rest. The area inside is getting larger and larger. If we continue to form a team, I'm afraid it will be difficult to investigate the situation here clearly. When dawn comes, let's split up. Wang Yanhan looked at the other 4 vice-captains. The reason why so many of them came was so that it would be more convenient for them to split up later. Xiao Rojin and the other vice-captains nodded. It was not very convenient for such a large team to move. If they split up, everyone's speed would be faster. What's more, they came here to understand the situation of the demonic dragon abyss. On the other hand, it was a competition between several forces. If the Azure Dragon School's cultivators understood the situation here one step ahead of them, they would undoubtedly lose. This was not the result they wanted to see. Everyone has to be more careful tonight. The dark aura here is so dense. Skeletons may appear at any time. Wang Yanhan looked at everyone. In terms of understanding of this kind of place, these cultivators from the lower realms might have a better understanding than others. It doesn't matter. Even if skeletons appear, how could we be afraid of those skeletons with so many of us? A vice-captain said indifferently, skeletons are just some things that are already dead. How could they be compared to us living people? If they appear, I will directly crush them into powder. Another vice-captain also said with a smile. Seeing that they didn't care at all, Wang Yanhan couldn't help but frown. He emphasized, I'm not joking. I know how powerful this skeleton army is. Once they appear, it will be very dangerous. Wang Yanhan, don't be an alarmist. Our team has a total of 50 people. How powerful can those skeletons be? With so many of us gathered together, no matter what kind of skeleton it is, it won't be able to shake us. Don't think that you can throw your weight around just because you're the captain. Xiao Rojin looked at Wang Yanhan with displeasure. At this moment, she was extremely dissatisfied with Bailey Hongzhuang. Seeing that Wang Yanhan and Bailey Hongzhuang had such a good relationship, her anger that could not be vented seemed to have found a breakthrough. As Xiao Rojin's voice fell, the other cultivators nodded one after another. They only felt that Wang Yanhan came from the lower realm and had not seen much of the world, so he was startled. Wang Yanhan's complexion was livid. He did not expect that everyone was actually so unconvinced of him. Wang Yanhan, don't bother with them. They don't put the skeletons in their eyes now, but when the skeleton army really appears, they will know how powerful it is. Yi Haomiao walked to Wang Yanhan's side and patted his shoulder. Chapter 4399. Senior brother, Hao Miao is right. There's no need to argue with them. The cultivators from the upper realm have always liked to be self-righteous and have no respect for anything. However, I believe that sooner or later, they will suffer the consequences of their own actions. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze quietly turned to Xiao Rojin, who was not far away. Her eyes darkened slightly. Xiao Rojin actually wants to take revenge on me, but she couldn't find a breakthrough, so she pointed the spear at you. I've implicated you. Wang Yanhan waved his hand. Junior sister, all of this has nothing to do with you. In fact, everyone has some opinions about me being the leader. Senior brother, you have this ability. Steward Wu has taken a fancy to your ability, so he let you lead the team. As for the others, most of them are just a little jealous in their hearts, but it's only a matter of time before they accept it. Your ability is obvious to all. Di Beichen spoke slowly. His low and gentle voice was filled with comfort. Everyone would encounter stumbling blocks on the road to success, but it didn't matter. Wang Yanhan's eyes flashed with a strange light, and then he chuckled. Junior brother Di, your ability is even more outstanding. If you weren't unwilling, it wouldn't be long before the position of leader would be yours. It's rare for me to be free. Di Beichen's lips curled into a faint smile. Besides, I think it's better for you to be the leader, senior brother. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others spoke so authoritatively, Wang Yanhan's mood was obviously much better. Let's rest first and recover our energy. We'll split up tomorrow. Okay. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were about to move, Xiao Rojin and the other two vice leaders said, we're going to go ahead and take a look. Why don't we split up tonight? As soon as these words came out, Wang Yanhan couldn't help but stand up and frown. It's late, and it's very dangerous to move now. Why don't we rest for the night and move tomorrow? Wang Yanhan, although you're the leader, Steward Wu also said that we're split into 5 teams this time. Our members don't have any objections. Why do you care so much? I'm not trying to control you, Wang Yanhan explained. It's just that it's too dangerous at night. It'll be less safe if we separate. That's our business, Xiao Rojin said slowly. We've already made a decision. Xiao Rojin, this. Wang Yanhan's expression was ugly. Everything he said was for everyone's safety, but he didn't expect everyone to be so ungrateful. You don't have to say any more. It's decided. Xiao Rojin and the other 2 vice captains seemed to have made up their minds. They immediately led the team of cultivators and set off. From the looks of it, it was impossible to stop them. At this time, Di Beichen stood up and said, 3 vice captains, now that you don't listen to your captain's advice and insist on leaving, if something happens, are you going to take responsibility? Hearing this, Xiao Rojin and the other 2 couldn't help but look at Di Beichen. Then they chuckled and said, of course, could it be that we can't bear the responsibility? In that case, why don't you sign a letter of responsibility? Then Di Beichen took out a piece of paper. While the 2 sides were arguing just now, he had already written the contents simply. Looking at the letter of responsibility that Di Beichen handed over, the faces of Xiao Rojin and the other 2 became very ugly. Di Beichen, you're just an ordinary member. It's not your turn to intervene in this kind of thing. Chapter 4400. In the face of the disdain of the 2 vice captains, Di Beichen was unusually calm, as if the target of their disdain and ridicule was not him. That's right. In the past, several vice captains were prepared to bear the responsibility themselves. Why don't you sign it? This way, everything will be clearer. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. In case something happens, someone will shirk the responsibility. That's funny. We won't shirk the responsibility for this kind of thing. You really think you're important? Under Bailey Hongzhuang's provocation, Xiao Rojin and the other 2 quickly signed their names and then left with the team. Wang Yanhan looked at the backs of Xiao Rojin and the others as they left and couldn't help but sigh. This kind of situation was not what he wanted to see. Senior, don't mind it. People should always pay the price for their arrogance. They have already signed a guarantee to prove that they insisted on this matter and it has nothing to do with you. Bailey Hongzhuang comforted. Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. I understand. In that situation just now, even if I stopped it, it would have been useless. You made them sign this responsibility letter, which helped me solve a hidden danger. He naturally understood that Di Beichen's actions were completely for his sake, because in this way, if there really was trouble, as long as he took out this responsibility letter, Steward Wu would not blame him. However, he was the captain after all, and this kind of feeling was really not good. Wang Yanhan, don't be depressed. Actually, this is not a big deal. Yi Hao Miao comforted. They just follow Xiao Rojin's lead. They just want to take this opportunity to show off in front of Xiao Rojin. Why bother with them? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but look at the other vice-captain. Fortunately, this vice-captain didn't leave. Otherwise, if only the 10 of them were left here, Wang Yanhan's face as the captain would really be lost. Wang Yanhan, are we going to rest here tonight? Another vice-captain, Lu Yan, asked. Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. The terrain here is still relatively safe. The risk of resting here will be slightly smaller. He had stayed in the training ground for a long time and had some experience in choosing a place to rest. Although he couldn't guarantee 100% accuracy, there was no problem most of the time. That's fine. Lu Yin smiled. Don't take it too seriously. It's safer for the 3 teams to be together. It's no problem for our 2 teams here. Anyway, we have to act separately tomorrow. It's just a little earlier. I'm just worried that they will encounter danger. Wang Yanhan sighed. But obviously, it's useless for me to say anything. Let them be. Are the skeletons here really that powerful? You seem to be very afraid of these skeletons. Lu Yan's eyes fell on Wang Yanhan, Bailey Hongzhuang, and the others. He was not stupid. From the expressions of Wang Yanhan and the others, he could see that they were really afraid of these skeletons. Lu Yan, I'm not lying to you. Once the skeleton army appears, it's really an army. As far as I know, the skeletons of the upper realm are much more powerful than those of the lower realm because they were stronger when they were alive. Once they appear, if you don't treat them carefully, you might really lose your life. Chapter 44:01. Hearing this, LV Yin nodded. I understand. If you have time, why don't you tell me about the characteristics of this skeleton army? If we encounter them after we split up, our team can also have some experience in dealing with them. Looking at LV Yan's serious appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen couldn't help but look at each other. Previously, LV Yan was the least conspicuous of the 4 vice-captains, but now, judging from LV Yan's attitude, they realized that LV Yan didn't seem to be simple. Generally speaking, such humble cultivators tended to have higher achievements than those who thought highly of themselves. Okay, Wang Yanhan nodded slightly. He naturally didn't mind explaining more about these situations, but Xiao Rojin and the others didn't want to listen. As the captain, he hoped that everyone could return safely. This was the best way to complete Steward Wu's instructions. When LV Yin and the other cultivators heard Wang Yanhan's description of the skeleton army, the expressions of the people who were still at a loss about the skeleton army suddenly changed. They didn't expect that the skeleton army would appear in such a terrifying scene. If everything was really like what Wang Yanhan said, then his previous cautiousness was indeed correct. In that terrifying pit, if he wasn't careful, the entire team would be wiped out. Captain, fortunately, we're with you. After understanding this, we finally know how to deal with it. A cultivator looked at Wang Yanhan with a rueful expression. If they encountered such a situation without any understanding of the situation, it was very likely that they would be utterly defeated. Now that they had a little more understanding of the situation, at least they knew how to deal with it and wouldn't panic. Wang Yanhan smiled slightly. It's good that you're willing to believe in me. Captain, actually we all believe in you. Although identity and status are part of it, most cultivators started from scratch. No matter how strong their background is, it can't be compared to their own strength. Everyone spoke one after another. Most of them didn't have a very strong background. They were just ordinary people in the upper realm. Even in front of Wang Yanhan, they wouldn't have much of a sense of accomplishment. On the contrary, everyone could see Wang Yanhan's efforts. It's good that Xiao Rojin and the others left. Our team is happy and harmonious. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a faint smile as she turned to look at Di Beichen. That's right. Di Beichen smiled faintly. Without them, we can work together. By the way, I have some healing medicine here. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly stood up. The damage left behind by the skeletons are all attribute damage. Normal healing potions have no effect, but this kind of healing potion is quite effective. Everyone, take some with you. If you accidentally get injured, you can treat it in time. She had prepared quite a lot of this kind of medicine at that time. Originally, he thought that he wouldn't need to use it for a while after coming to the upper realm. He didn't expect that it would appear again so soon. With Bailey Hongzhuang's healing medicine in hand, the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang gradually changed. Previously, they more or less had some misunderstandings about Bailey Hongzhuang's group, but today, Bailey Hongzhuang's actions gave them a completely different feeling. Junior Sister Bailey, thank you. Everyone thanked her. You're welcome. We're all from the same sect. I hope we can all return to the Blazing Flames sect safely. Chapter 4402. Xiao Rojin and her group of 30 people left in a mighty manner. Even in this pitch-black environment, they were not the least bit worried with their large numbers. This Wanyan Han really thinks he's so great just because he's a captain. He wants us to listen to him. The vice captain of Group 3 said disdainfully. That's right. He doesn't even look at his own status. What ability does he have to order us around? The vice captain of Group 4 nodded. It's better to leave early. I'm tired of seeing his self-righteous face again. Hearing their words, Xiao Rojin's face rippled with a gentle smile. After all, he's from the lower realm, and this is his first time leading a team, so he's a bit paranoid. In fact, with our team's strength, there's no need to fear the skeleton army. Senior Sister Xiao is right. It's more comfortable for us to come out now. Now, there are only 20 people left in their team. Speaking of which, Lu Yin doesn't fit in, so he should leave with us. The vice captain of Group 3 was quite dissatisfied. He wanted to let Wanyan Han's team stay alone. Just thinking about it made Wanyan Han's expression very interesting, but he didn't expect Lu Yin to not leave with them. Lu Yin has always had such a temper. It's not strange for him to do this. Xiao Rojin's expression was calm. This was also within her expectations. Indeed, Lu Yin and Wanyan Han's personalities are somewhat similar. He doesn't have any background, so he's slightly closer to Wanyan Han. We might as well take advantage of the time when those cowards are hiding to check out the depths of the demonic dragon abyss. We'll understand the situation one step ahead of them. We can also go back and claim credit. The vice captain of Group 4 calculated in his heart. As long as they made a great contribution, manager would naturally not value Wanyan Han so much. The 30 people walked in the darkness. Xiao Rojin used the power of light to illuminate the way forward, so everyone's speed was not slow. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was preparing to rest, suddenly looked thoughtfully into the distance. Di Beichen saw this and couldn't help but ask, "Wife, what are you looking at?" I sense the aura of light energy in the distance. It should be Xiao Rojin. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows as a playful smile appeared on her lips. It seems that they really don't care about skeleton. Di Beichen shook his head. I can foresee that something will happen to them tonight. They chose their own path, so let them walk it. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged. They had tried to persuade him, but it was to no avail. If he kept emphasizing it, the other party wouldn't appreciate it. If it was a thankless task, it was fine to try it once, but if he persisted, it would be lowering his status. White Lion and Xiao Bai looked at each other. They understood what their master meant. The skeleton army was very sensitive to the power of light, and because Xiao He was a pure light-type being, she was not used to staying here and had already returned to the Chaos Ring. If Xiao Rojin used the power of light here, wouldn't that be the same as attracting the skeleton army? Is this woman brainless? Baisha was confused. She was the representative of the Blazing Flames sect, but she didn't use her brain at all. Chapter 4403. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others rested where they were. Although they said they were resting, everyone still looked around vigilantly. After Wang Yanhan's introduction, everyone had already realized how terrifying the skeleton army was, so no one dared to let their guard down. After all, if such a deep pit suddenly appeared where they were resting, it would be too late for them to do anything. Instead of resting like this, it was better to open their eyes and look around. That way, they could feel more at ease. In contrast, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were much calmer. Now that they had obtained the power of darkness, their perception of the aura of darkness had become much more obvious. If the skeleton army appeared, they would definitely be able to sense it. Time gradually passed. Everyone chatted with each other, and it passed very quickly. However, this tranquility was broken by a scream. Hearing this scream, everyone couldn't help but look in the direction of the source of the sound. It was the direction where Xiao Rojin and the others had left. Judging from this sound, it's very far away from us. Yi Haomiao stood up and looked into the distance. This sound was obviously a scream made by many people at the same time. However, it was only a faint sound in their ears. It could be seen that the distance was really far. Could it be that something really happened to them? Lu Yan's expression changed slightly. He didn't think that Xiao Rojin and the others would really encounter danger just because they didn't listen to Wang Yanhan's opinion. From this distance and direction, it's very likely that it's them. Wang Yanhan frowned slightly. He didn't expect that something would happen so soon. Whether it's them or not, let's go over and take a look. If there's really danger, we can also help. For a moment, everyone stood up and walked in the direction of the scream. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other. They could already confirm that it was Xiao Rojin and the others who were in trouble. However, they were so far away that they probably wouldn't be able to help much when they rushed over. They deserved it, White Lion said coldly. They reaped what they sowed. They were the ones who reaped what they sowed. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and patted Baisher's head. Let's go and take a look. Everyone sped up and hurried forward. However, it was late at night, and they could encounter danger at any time. Even if everyone sped up, their speed was not much faster. Everyone was on tenterhooks. Previously, they had already understood the terror of the skeleton army. Now that the other three teams were in trouble, their minds were constantly thinking about what kind of situation they would face if they went there. Wang Yanhan, they should be fine, right? Lu Yan could not help but look at Wang Yanhan, his voice unable to conceal the worry and nervousness. I don't know either. Wang Yanhan shook his head. Their strength is not bad. If they encounter the skeleton army, they should have the ability to escape. However, if the hole happens to appear under their feet, it will be a little troublesome. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. For some reason, everyone had a feeling that it might be the second possibility. As they hurried along, they realized that the sound was getting closer and closer. It was obvious that the battle was not far from them. The aura of darkness is getting denser and denser. Di Beichun said slowly. Along the way, he realized that the aura of darkness was constantly increasing. It was obviously the skeleton army and nothing else. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. It's good to let them suffer. After this incident, everyone's dissatisfaction with senior brother should lessen a lot. Chapter 4404. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived, they saw an extremely tragic scene. There were hundreds of skeletons in the huge army of skeletons. They were black and majestic, like an army of darkness, making people feel awe. In front of such a huge army, Xiao Rojin's team of 30 people seemed very small. At a glance, not even half of the original 30 people were left. Everyone was desperately running away, and the speed of the skeleton army was equally astonishing. After seeing the appearance of Wang Yanhan and the others, Xiao Rojin hurriedly shouted as if she had seen a life-saving straw, "Help us!" Lu Yan and the others were completely stunned when they saw this scene. Even though Wang Yanhan had told them about the terrifying scene of the skeleton army, it was absolutely incomparable to the shock of seeing it with their own eyes. Oh my God, so scary. How can there be so many skeletons, and their combat power is so strong? What Wang Yanhan and the others said before was right. Compared to the skeleton army, We are really small. The three vice-captains, including Xiao Rojin, were pale at the moment. They were originally very proud of going deep, but they didn't expect that a pit would suddenly appear under their feet. Then, some of their teammates were directly killed by the skeleton army. Their reaction speed was also extremely fast, and they had already started a counterattack at the first moment. However, when they saw the number of skeletons increasing, they were completely dumbfounded. Originally, there were only a few dozen skeletons, so they didn't take it to heart. However, when these skeletons increased to 100 or even a few hundred, everyone could only escape. Only those who escaped fast could have a chance to live. Once they were late and the skeleton army caught up, they would only end up losing their lives. It was only now that they realized that what Wang Yanhan had said earlier was not an exaggeration, but the truth. Let's go help them. Wang Yanhan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. The other party was from the same sect, so they couldn't just watch the other party be completely annihilated here. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Everyone, do your best and move together. There are too many skeletons. Once they catch up, only death awaits. Everyone should also pay attention to their own safety when saving people, Deep Bachan added. Everyone responded and immediately went to help the cultivators who were trying to escape. Deep Bachan arrived in front of a cultivator who was being chased. The dark energy in his body quickly surged out. Immediately after, the skeletons that were chasing him paused for a moment. Noticing this, Deep Bachan suddenly had an idea. He used the power of darkness to envelop the escaping cultivator. Following this action, the skeletons behind seemed to treat this cultivator as one of their own. Their movements were a little confused, and they turned around to chase after the other cultivators. After the cultivator was freed, he collapsed beside Di Beichan, his eyes filled with gratitude. Di Beichan, thank you for saving my life. Di Beichan waved his hand. It's fine. Go ahead and find a place to rest. I'll go save the others. Thank you. The man thanked him profusely. His gratitude was beyond words. After Di Beichan discovered this method, he began to save people quickly. Every time, it was very effective. Chapter 4405. Under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichan undoubtedly became the fastest people to save people. With their help, the cultivators escaped one after another. However, everyone had to run forward for a distance before they could escape the pursuit of the skeleton army. It should be safe here. Everyone can rest for a while. Wang Yanhan looked at the skeleton army behind him and couldn't help but say. Hearing Wang Yanhan's words, everyone sat down on the ground in exhaustion, panting heavily. That soul-stirring scene from before had almost scared them out of their wits. Right now, they only wanted to have a good rest. Everyone looked at the original team of 50 people, but now there were only 30 people left. They all felt a sense of sorrow in their hearts. Most of the cultivators who died were their close friends. They didn't expect that in such a short time, they would disappear forever from this world. For a moment, many cultivators' eyes were filled with tears. If they were a little slower just now, they might have died as well. Captain, thank you for coming to save us. A cultivator couldn't help but say. If Wang Yanhan and the others hadn't appeared, they might have been completely annihilated. Wang Yanhan waved his hand and said, Since I'm the captain, I naturally should take good care of you. I just didn't expect such a coincidence. We just separated tonight, and such a thing happened. It was only the first day in the demonic dragon abyss, and they had lost more than a dozen cultivators. This loss was not small. Hearing Wang Yanhan's words, everyone felt a warmth in their hearts. Previously, they ignored Wang Yanhan so much, but he was able to disregard their former enmity and never took it to heart. In comparison, what they did was indeed too inappropriate. When they looked at Xiao Rojin and the others again, everyone's gaze became a little complicated. If they didn't insist on leaving, as team members, they could only leave with them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have caused such a big loss. Because of the impulsive actions of the three vice-captains, half of the cultivators paid with their lives, and they also almost lost their lives. Xiao Rojin and the other two's expressions were extremely ugly. They didn't expect such a situation to happen at all. Recalling the previous scenes, they even felt that they were still in shock. Everything that Wang Yanhan had said before was actually true. When they encountered the skeleton army, they were completely defeated. It was really too terrifying. Junior Brother D, Junior Sister Bailey, thank you for saving me. Forgive me for being prejudiced against the power of darkness. But after this incident, I realized that every power is equal. The power of darkness can also save people. Just now, almost all of us were saved by you. If it weren't for you, we really would have died. At this moment, one of the cultivators stood up and bowed deeply to Bailey Hongzhuang and Yi Zichen. He had no words to thank them for saving his life, so he could only express his gratitude in this way. After the cultivator did so, several figures stood up one after another and bowed to Bailey Hongzhuang. Thank you for saving my life. Everyone, you're too polite. Since we're from the same sect, it's only right that we help each other, Deep Beichun said slowly. I apologize for my prejudice against you. Junior Brother D, you are an outstanding cultivator. Deep Beichun smiled faintly. Thank you. After seeing this scene, Wang Yanhan and the others were also relieved. Deep Beichun's dark attribute was really useful in this kind of place. Chapter 4406. Seeing the change in everyone's attitude, Wang Yanhan and the others couldn't help but feel gratified. In their opinion, Di Beichun was a true genius. If he was rejected by everyone because of his darkness attribute, it would be too much of a pity. Fortunately, everyone was discerning. After this incident, they finally saw everything clearly. The expressions of Xiao Rojin and the others were extremely ugly. Originally, their goal was to take advantage of this opportunity to attack Wang Yanhan and the others. They didn't expect that it would be their failure, and instead, it would be Wang Yanhan and the others. Now, from everyone's expression, it could be seen that everyone trusted Wang Yanhan and the others from the bottom of their hearts. On the contrary, their trust in them had rapidly decreased. However, no matter how unwilling they were, they couldn't do anything. Being able to keep their lives was already the most fortunate thing for them. We escaped a calamity tonight. Everyone is tired. The sky is gradually brightening. The skeleton army won't appear again. Everyone have a good rest. Wang Yanhan said. Hearing Wang Yanhan's words, everyone was incomparably convinced. Immediately, they began to relax and rest. Because, among all of them, only Wang Yanhan and the others understood the skeleton army the best. This can be considered a blessing in disguise. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and sighed. It's just that the loss is a bit greater. With the arrival of the day, everyone had completely recovered after a few hours of rest. However, what happened last night was still vivid in their minds. Clearly, they couldn't forget it for a while. It's daybreak. We can move separately. However, the team may need to be regrouped. Wang Yanhan looked at everyone with a slightly complicated expression. Originally, there were 50 people, but now there were only 30 people left. It was really terrible. The eyes of Xiao Rojin and the other two vice-captains also flickered. They were constantly thinking in their hearts. It had to be said that the situation yesterday really scared them out of their wits. So much so that they didn't have the courage to leave alone. Captain, we'll follow you. Yeah, it's too dangerous here. We don't have any experience. If we encounter the situation last night, it's really, Captain, just let us follow you. Don't split into groups. Everyone spoke one after another. Their voices were filled with pleading. Now, they only believed in Wang Yanhan and the others. Only in this way could they feel safe. Wang Yanhan obviously didn't expect that everyone would have such a request. He couldn't help but be stunned. So many of us are moving together? Actually, it's not a big deal. Although it will be slower, at least it's safer, Xiao Rojin said slowly. At this moment, she no longer cared so much. If it weren't for the fact that she still wanted to save some face, she would have immediately returned to the Blazing Flames sect. It was not worth it to train in a place where she could lose her life at any time. With her status, she only needed to stay in the Raging Flames sect. Noticing the change in Xiao Rojin's attitude, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other with interest in their eyes. However, with so many of us moving together, it's very likely that we won't be able to compare to the Azure Dragon Gate. Wang Yanhan frowned. How about this? Let's split into two groups. On one hand, it's safer. On the other hand, we can speed things up a little, Lu Yin said. Chapter 4407. After some discussion, it was finally decided that Wang Yanhan and Lu Yin would lead the team and split into two teams. Although Xiao Rojin and the two vice-captains still wanted to lead the team, it was a pity that no one wanted to pay attention to them and did not mention them at all. When they saw this scene, they tactfully stopped mentioning this matter to avoid embarrassing themselves. After splitting into two teams, Xiao Rojin and the other three vice-captains naturally became ordinary team members. Unfortunately, they all followed Wang Yanhan's team. In any case, they were vice-captains. It was not a big deal to follow the captain, but if they followed Lu Yin, it would be really embarrassing. Everyone went all the way inside. What they needed to know now was not only what was in the demonic dragon abyss, but also how big it was. Wife, has the feeling of being followed disappeared? Di Baichen asked. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly. No, it's still there. Di Baichen's eyes darkened. We have been away for so long, but they are still following us. It seems that the other party's background is not simple. But why is the other party following us? Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled. This was what she couldn't understand the most. Although they had made a lot of noise after coming to Rowan City, they had not provoked many people. It was a little strange that the other party had followed them all the way to the depths of the demonic dragon abyss. Is it the Di family? Di Baichen pondered. It could be them, but would they follow us so far? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her slender eyebrows. She always felt that with the Di family's temperament, they would have jumped out long ago. Besides them, there's only one possibility left. Di Baichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's bright eyes. Gong Tianfeng's revenge. That is indeed possible. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression changed slightly. They had embarrassed Gong Tianfeng in front of the president. She would definitely be very unhappy, so it was possible that she would send people to take revenge. We have to be careful. Since we already know of their existence, we should be prepared to deal with them at any time. Yes, during the day, everyone's speed could be said to be extremely fast. Because they knew that skeletons would not appear during the day, everyone was very relieved. It was only in the evening that the group slowed down. Let's find a suitable place to rest nearby, Wang Yanhan said slowly. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Due to the fact that the other cultivators didn't know much about the training grounds and didn't know what kind of place was the safest, it was those who were more knowledgeable who scattered around to search. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen led some of the cultivators in a direction to find a suitable place. Everyone agreed to meet up later. Xiao Rojin seemed to be competing with Bailey Hongzhuang, so she decided to follow Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang could not be bothered with this. She had never regarded Xiao Rojin as her opponent, but the other party liked to compete with her, so there was nothing she could do. It's so dark here, we can't see the surroundings at all. Junior Sister Bailey, you still don't know much about the use of light power. Why don't I teach you how to use light power to illuminate? Chapter 4408. Ever since she came to the demonic dragon abyss, she had lost face in front of Bailey Hongzhuang several times. Now that she had a chance, she naturally wanted to save some face. However, just as Xiao Rojin was about to use her light power, Bailey Hongzhuang snapped, "Stop!" Xiao Rojin couldn't help but be startled by Bailey Hongzhuang's sudden shout. She stopped what she was doing and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with displeasure. "What are you doing?" "Senior Sister Xiao, don't you know that the light power will attract the skeleton army? There are dark elements everywhere here, and the most repulsive element is the light element. If you use the light power here, it will undoubtedly be a bright light in the dark night, making those skeletons target us. The light and pleasant voice was cold, and Bailey Hongzhuang's beautiful eyes were still fierce. If Xiao Rojin was courting death, she would be too lazy to pay attention to it. But if it affected their safety, she could no longer turn a blind eye to it. Xiao Rojin, who was about to make trouble, was also stunned at this moment. She had a startled look on her face, obviously not expecting such a situation. Isn't the light power the nemesis of the dark power? They should be afraid of the light power. Xiao Rojin retorted, but her voice was somewhat powerless. The light power is indeed the nemesis of the dark power, but only when the light power is strong enough. If an army of light attributes appears, the skeleton army may leave, but your scattered light power will only attract them to destroy you. Senior Sister Xiao, you should understand this principle, right? After Bailey Hongzhuang faintly dropped a sentence, she looked into the distance, looking for a place to rest tonight. Xiao Rojin looked embarrassed. She opened her mouth, but closed it in the end, because what Bailey Hongzhuang said was really reasonable, and no one could refute it. The other cultivators couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin. Bailey Hongzhuang's words reminded them that Xiao Rojin used the light power to illuminate the area yesterday. In that case, it was very likely that the skeleton army that attacked them yesterday was provoked by Xiao Rojin. Xiao Rojin didn't think of this at first, but when she noticed the change in everyone's expressions, she finally thought of it. Her face immediately turned pale, and her aura instantly dissipated into nothingness. She just walked with her head lowered, not daring to meet everyone's eyes. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and Lin Mingyao were searching, several figures suddenly appeared before them. Bailey Hongzhuang, Deep Beichun, I'd like to see who can protect you today. Devao's figure suddenly appeared. At this moment, he had a complacent look on his face. In order to confirm whether Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were accompanied by a mentor, they had spent a lot of effort. In the end, they had found the best opportunity. Looking at the group of people who appeared in front of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun looked at each other. They didn't expect that they were really from the D family. However, for some reason, after knowing that they were cultivators from the D family, they actually heaved a sigh of relief. At least, the people from the D family should be easier to deal with than the people sent by Gong Tianfeng. The other cultivators couldn't help but be dumbfounded when they saw the sudden appearance of the D family. No one expected that someone would appear halfway. This is a personal grudge between us and Bailey Hongzhuang. It has nothing to do with you. You can leave. Chapter 4409. After all, if they killed the other cultivators from the Blazing Flames sect, they would be disrespecting the Blazing Flames sect. They did not want to offend the Blazing Flames sect completely because of this. As Di Sudong finished speaking, the cultivators could not help but look at each other. This situation was indeed very awkward for them. They did not want to lose their lives because of this, but if they left Bailey Hongzhuang and White Tiger here because of this, they would be too disloyal. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang also said, "You guys should leave. This is a grudge between the four of us. We will settle it ourselves." But they have the advantage in numbers, and there are only two of you. This is too dangerous. A cultivator frowned. Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang had saved him yesterday. If he left just like this, he would not know how to repay their kindness. Di Beichun waved his hand. "It's okay. You can go back and help us inform Wanyan Han and the rest." Neither he nor Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to implicate them. There were 6 cultivators from the D family in front of them, and they were all very powerful. However, Hongzhuang, Xiaohe, and White Line were not weak either. Although they could not guarantee that they would defeat them, they would at least be able to deal with them for a while. Moreover, if worst came to worst, it would be like last time. As long as they suppressed one of them, the situation would be reversed. Just as the cultivators were puzzled, Xiao Rojin said, "Since this is a personal grudge between them, it is not appropriate for us to interfere. Let's go back first." With that, Xiao Rojin turned and left first. Seeing this, the other cultivators hesitated and finally chose to leave as well. After all, no one wanted to get involved in this mess. Master, these guys are too disloyal. White Lion's eyes were filled with disgust. They had helped these people before, but they had actually done this. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was indifferent. True friends can only be encountered by chance, not sought after. To have a few such friends is something to be happy about. As for the others, there is no need to force them. After everyone left, the smiles on the faces of DeVows and the others grew even brighter. I thought you guys would stay in the blazing sect forever. You're finally out. Time and time again, they had suffered losses in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They had almost begun to doubt their lives, but at this moment, they finally had a chance to fight them head-on. Needless to say, this was a crushing situation. At the thought of this, DeVows was a little excited. Looks like you didn't suffer enough from us last time. This time, it won't be as easy as last time. Baichan's voice was slightly cold. This group of people was always looking for trouble. It was time to put an end to it. As soon as he said that, DeVows' face darkened. It would have been fine if Baichan hadn't mentioned the previous incident. Now that he mentioned it, it immediately reminded him of the embarrassing scene. Last time we were ambushed by you. This time, we will send you directly to the underground to be buried with Wen Tao. DeVows finally couldn't hold back. With a move, he directly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. After the last fight, he already understood that he was no match for Baichan. So this time, he wouldn't send himself to his doorstep. When DeVows made his move, Sudong and the others immediately began to move as well. Now that there were 6 of them, it was undoubtedly the easiest way to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Bang! Chapter 44:10. Bailey Hongzhuang and Baichan unleashed their full strength. Even if they were facing cultivators stronger than them, they were not afraid at all. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang and DeVows clashed head-on. The power of light was unleashed without any concealment. If it was a normal day, she would naturally not use it. However, it was not a bad idea to attract the skeleton army over. After all, they could completely cover themselves with the aura of darkness. The skeleton army would not attack them. On the contrary, DeVows and the rest would not be so lucky. Blood aura field. Bailey Hongzhuang coldly shouted in her heart. A dense blood aura suddenly erupted. Her dark pupils were dyed with a blood-red color. The surrounding aura also became cold and murderous. Noticing the change in Bailey Hongzhuang, DeVows could not help but be stunned. For a moment, he did not know what Bailey Hongzhuang was doing. However, when he noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang's aura had actually started to rapidly rise, his expression changed. Star Radiance Level 5. Star Radiance Level 6. She who was originally Star Radiance Level 4 had actually forcefully raised her aura to Star Radiance Level 6. From that pure aura, one could tell that she had really raised her aura and was not putting on an act. How could this be? DeVows was dumbfounded. There was actually someone who could forcefully raise their cultivation like this. This was too heaven-defying. However, it was only Star Radiance Level 6. It was not much of a threat to him. Even if you used all your strength, you would only be able to raise your cultivation to Star Radiance Level 6. You are still not my opponent. DeVows' face rippled with a cold smile. He was Star Radiance Level 8. How could Bailey Hongzhuang compete with him? Don't worry. I will definitely let you die an incomparably painful death later. DeVows' gaze was sinister. Towards Bailey Hongzhuang and Baichan, he had already tormented them countless times in his imagination. Right now, he was just starting to implement it. I'm afraid it's not as easy as you think. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were cold, and her murderous aura spread out. The dense murderous aura mixed with the astonishing blood chi, causing people to shudder. DeVows only felt an inexplicable fear in the bottom of his heart. He faintly felt that Bailey Hongzhuang was invincible. Under the influence of this state of mind, DeVows discovered that he was unable to fully display his Star Radiance Level 8 strength. He tried to exert his full strength, but he couldn't do it. Bailey Hongzhuang's murderous eyes kept circling in his mind, making him uneasy. If Bailey Hongzhuang was not DeVao's opponent in the past, her strength had undoubtedly increased by a few notches after her Yuan Qi had been converted into the power of light. Coupled with her killing aura and blood aura, she was not at a disadvantage at all. How could this be? DeVao's expression was extremely ugly. In the past, he didn't really fight with Bailey Hongzhuang. He always felt that defeating Bailey Hongzhuang should be a very simple matter. However, the current scene was completely beyond his imagination. At this moment, he finally understood why Di Wintao was defeated by Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's fighting strength could not be judged based on their cultivation. If they would be so sure once they fought, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Chapter 4411. Di Sudong could not do anything to Di Beichen at the moment. He finally understood why Wu Wenfeng thought so highly of these fellows. Even though he was unwilling to admit it, he understood that once these young people developed in the future, they would not be simple characters. Di Sudong's gaze grew increasingly sinister at the thought of this. It was precisely because of this that he had to get rid of all these people. Otherwise, these people would bring great trouble to the Di family in the future. "Someone help me," DeVao's hurriedly shouted. At a time like this, he did not care about his reputation. All he wanted was to kill Bailey Hongzhuang. Bai Shi and Bailey Hongzhuang faced off against 3 people, including DeVao's, while Di Beichen faced off against 3 people. It goes without saying that their opponents were not weak at all. It was not an easy task for them to deal with them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. Their thoughts were simple. If they could win, they would fight. If they could not win, they would run. They would grind their opponents to death. Within the range of the blood and murderous aura, their opponents' cultivation levels were suppressed. Hence, Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's opponents had undoubtedly been weakened. Bailey Hongzhuang held the colored glass sword in her hand. Her beautiful face was murderous and emotionless. Her movement technique was ethereal and strange. She only needed to find an opening to deliver a fatal blow. Both parties' martial techniques collided loudly. The dazzling colors illuminated the darkness like brilliant fireworks. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen worked together seamlessly. Even when faced with 6 people's attacks, they were still able to take care of each other. Di Sudong and the others' expressions turned ugly. They had thought that this would be a one-sided situation. They never thought that it would be so troublesome to kill the 2 of them. If this continues, once reinforcements arrive, it would be difficult for them to attack. However, just as they were exchanging blows, a group of black-clothed men suddenly appeared and surrounded all of them. Upon seeing the sudden appearance of another group of people, Bailey Hongzhuang and the Di family cultivators could not help but stop what they were doing and look at each other in surprise. They did not understand who had suddenly appeared. The cultivators who appeared were all dressed in black with black veils covering their faces. It was impossible to see their faces clearly. That black figure was hidden in this training ground, and there was no way to discover it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivators who suddenly appeared in front of her. This group of people seemed to be well-trained. Previously, when they were fighting, they did not notice that there were other cultivators around them. She did not know why, but she vaguely felt that the stalker she had sensed earlier might not have been the Di family's cultivators, but this group of men in black. "Who are you?" DeVao's clearly did not expect that a group of people would suddenly appear under such circumstances. Furthermore, based on the other party's posture, they seemed to be well-trained and had an extraordinary background. However, that group of people completely ignored DeVao's and only looked at their leader. "Leader, what should we do?" "Kill them all." The leader's eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. They were cold and emotionless. He looked at the group of people in front of him as if they were cats and dogs. He did not have the slightest bit of sympathy. As the man finished speaking, the other men in black nodded one after another. They immediately took out their weapons and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Chapter 44:12. Who do you think you are? How dare you threaten to kill all of us? Aren't you too arrogant? A cultivator from the D family stepped forward with a mocking smile on his face. The other party did not even know who they were, yet they dared to speak so arrogantly. Besides him, D Sudong and the others also had a mocking look on their faces. The other party did not have more people than them. They were merely 4 people, yet they dared to speak so arrogantly in front of them. It was simply ridiculous. However, what happened next made them unable to laugh anymore. The other party's figure flashed, and the head of the D family cultivator who had spoken fell to the ground. It rolled a few times before it finally stopped at Devao's feet. Devao felt as if his throat was being choked by a pair of invisible hands. He could not utter a single word. The other party's speed was as fast as lightning. The D family cultivators did not even have time to react before the other party's attack ended. The most terrifying thing was that there was no sign of struggle or pain from the beginning to the end. Only his widened eyes showed his disbelief. At that moment, they finally understood that the 4 people in front of them were not ordinary people. Such a method could be considered terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun exchanged glances. In their hearts, they already knew that these people were professional assassins. Apart from professionally trained assassins, no one else could have such nimble methods and swift speed. Their actions were silent. If it had been a sneak attack, they might not even have known how they died. The other party had stepped forward openly because they did not care about them at all. In their hearts, they did not deserve to be their opponents. Almost immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun fled without hesitation. They were no match for this group of people. If they stayed, only death would await them. Devao's and the others' reactions were no different from Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's. A true expert could be judged by the way they attacked. However, their speed was slightly slower than Bailey Hongzhuang's. Everyone split into 2 groups and fled in different directions. The 4 cultivators also split into 2 groups. Since they had already made their move, they could not leave any traces behind. Moreover, such an opponent was not a problem for them at all. Even if the other party was given time to escape, he would not be able to escape from their clutches. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun fled as fast as they could. Behind them, blood-curdling screams could be heard. It was obvious that the cultivators of the D family had died at their hands. For the first time, Bailey Hongzhuang felt like she was on the run. There was a kind of panic in her heart, and all of her cells seemed to be activated at this moment. She could even hear the sound of her own heartbeat. She had no doubt that as long as she was slightly slower, the other party would directly chop off her head. In the process of escaping, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun tacitly avoided Wang Yanhan and the others. They were no match for this group of people at all. No matter how many people came, they were nothing more than cannon fodder. In such a tense moment, they did not even have the time to think about who the other party was and why they had immediately threatened to kill them. They did not even know who the other party was after. With a stomp, the other party's figure rushed directly in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 44:13. Cold. An extreme coldness spread throughout Bailey Hongzhuang's body. It was a coldness that came from the bottom of her heart. The other party's sharp eyes were merciless and murderous, as if she was only his prey. The other party's lips curled into a sinister sneer, and a sharp blade in his hand attacked her without hesitation. Ding! Di Beichun's flowing light sword blocked it. Wife, be careful! His warm and mellow voice was filled with concern, and he did not even have the time to say anything before he exchanged blows with the other party. Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction speed was extremely fast, and she immediately rushed forward. Even though they knew that they were no match for them, they still wanted to fight to the death. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's counterattack, the other party looked relaxed and at ease. Their eyes even carried a hint of playfulness, as if they were looking at 2 pets on the verge of death, and it was interesting to see their final struggle. The other party's abilities were definitely not at the Starlight Realm. Even if they used all their skills, they were still no match for them. In a short period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang's body was covered with wounds. That kind of pain was nothing in the face of death. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's desperate counterattack was unfortunately unable to injure the other party. It was a kind of indescribable despair. Wife! Just as the other party's sharp sword was about to pierce Bailey Hongzhuang's body, Di Beichen's figure flashed and blocked in front of her, pulling her into his arms. Di Beichen's actions were instinctive, without the slightest bit of hesitation. As long as he was still alive, he would protect Bailey Hongzhuang with his life. Blood, bright red and warm blood splashed on her face, and the fishy sweet smell stimulated her soul. She did not know who the other party was, nor did she know why they wanted to kill them. They had experienced a lot of pain in the past, but they had never experienced such despair. However, looking at Di Beichen beside her who was risking his life to protect her, the blood in her body seemed to ignite in an instant. The scorching heat almost burned her to ashes. Thinking that Di Beichen might leave her life because of this, or that they might be buried underground forever, or that they might never see their loved ones again, her eyes flashed with an indescribable madness. Ah! With a hysterical cry, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly felt that the question in her mind that she had been unable to figure out all this time was suddenly solved. Devil's Gate. Bailey Hongzhuang's scarlet eyes were filled with madness and cruelty. The power within her body exploded wildly, and a gigantic beast suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking her opponent's attack. It was a huge centipede. Its scarlet body reflected a cold light, and its hard and tough shell seemed indestructible. As soon as the crimson centipede appeared, it stared at the two cultivators in front of it, as if they were delicious food. The other party was obviously shocked by this sudden scene. They simply couldn't understand how such a giant beast could appear out of nowhere. What's going on? The two assassins were completely dumbfounded. They had lived for so long and had never encountered such a situation before. This fellow can't be this woman's contracted beast, right? The other assassin was puzzled. He had seen Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly shout, and this gigantic fellow had appeared out of thin air. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would have thought that he was dreaming. Chapter 44:14. The two men looked at each other. Based on their powers, it should be a piece of cake for them to finish off Bailey Hongzhuang and Xiao Bei. After all, the higher-ups had sent them here to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Otherwise, they would not have needed to deal with cultivators of this level. Previously, when they had received this mission, they had felt that it was unnecessary to use a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. However, the higher-ups had placed great importance on this mission, so they had no choice but to come personally. However, after witnessing this scene, they finally understood that the other party was no simple character. She had actually summoned such a large creature out of thin air. It was no wonder that the higher-ups had sent them here to deal with it. They had never seen such an ability before. Di Beichen, Bai Shi, and Xiao Bai stared at Bailey Hongzhuang in astonishment. They could not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang had managed to summon such a large creature. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang herself was in disbelief as she stared at the large creature before her. "Kill them," Bailey Hongzhuang ordered. As Bailey Hongzhuang spoke, the blood-red centipede began to attack the assassins. Its enormous strength forced the two assassins to retreat. This large creature with thick skin and flesh could not be defeated in a short period of time. However, Bailey Hongzhuang only glared at them. She wanted to remember their faces. She would definitely have her revenge for what had happened today. The large creature's appearance stopped the assassins in their tracks. Bailey Hongzhuang supported Di Beichen and quickly left. They did not know how long the large creature could hold them off. They could only try their best to find a place to hide. However, just as they were about to escape, the two cultivators who had been heading in another direction rushed over. "Master, what should we do?" Bai Shi and Xiao Bai's bodies were covered in wounds. They had finally found a chance to escape, but they never thought that they would be targeted by the other two. Despair spread once again. Leader, kill them. Don't let them get away. The two cultivators who were being forced back by the giant beast could only shout from the side. They didn't expect the giant beast to be so strong. They could only be chased by the giant beast and couldn't kill it in a short time. However, they could not allow Bailey Hongzhuang and Guriyun to leave this place alive. Otherwise, they would be severely punished when they return. Wife, let go of me. Di Beichun spoke slowly, but his attitude was unusually firm. If he continued to be with Bailey Hongzhuang, he would only be a burden to her. If he stayed, at least he could buy some time. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang could live, it was enough for him. However, Bailey Hongzhuang completely ignored him. In the next moment, Di Beichun was sucked into Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring. The four assassins stared at Di Beichun, who had suddenly disappeared. They were dumbfounded. Bailey Hongzhuang had first pulled this big fellow out of thin air. Now, she had made Di Beichun disappear out of thin air. Was she performing a magic trick? They looked around, but there was no sign of Di Beichun. By sure, Xiaobai, you two go in as well. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was solemn. Her eyes were so cold that there was no warmth in them. This was the only thing she could do now. Master, we're not going in. Master, you and I are one. If you die, I won't be able to live either. Let's fight to the death. Bai Shi's eyes were cold and fierce. There was no fear in them. Chapter 44:15. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes reddened. An indescribable, complex emotion rippled in her heart. No matter when or where, they would always be by her side, even if they had to die. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze turned sharp again. Good. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's performance, the four people's gazes changed gradually. Cultivators in the Starlight Realm were like ants to them. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's performance made them look at them in a new light. With their cultivation base, it was already very scary to be able to achieve this. Di Sudong and the others from before had a higher cultivation base than them, but they could not hold on for so long. They did not doubt that if these two cultivators were allowed to continue developing, they would definitely become terrifying existences in the future. Who are you people? Bailey Hongzhuang looked sharply at the four people in front of her. These four people had appeared out of nowhere, and their strength had completely exceeded their level. She was certain that they had never offended cultivators of this level. In fact, they did not have the qualifications to come into contact with people of this level in the upper realm. Naturally, they could not afford to offend them. However, the other party did not answer. Now that things have come to this, I can no longer escape. Why don't you let me die knowing? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. The outcome was already predictable. She was fighting with her back against the wall. However, even if she died, she should at least know who killed her. We can't tell you. The man in the lead had a cold gaze and an indifferent expression on his face. Other than a flash of surprise, his eyes were cold and inhuman from the beginning to the end. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart sank. It seemed that the people behind them were very careful. Even at this point, they were not willing to reveal their identity. They really could not be underestimated. Do it. The leader looked at the cultivators beside him. One person was enough to deal with Bailey Hongzhuang. Although they could not deal with this giant centipede in a short period of time, it would be enough if one of them could kill Bailey Hongzhuang. The assassin immediately attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was cold and murderous. At this moment, her body was covered in wounds. Even if she ran, she could not outrun her opponent. She might as well fight to the death. Ding! Both weapons clashed. The opponent's terrifying strength caused Bailey Hongzhuang's hand to go numb. Blood faintly, but she still held her sword tightly. Whoosh! All the power in her body erupted at this moment. It was as if everything around her had disappeared, and the only thing in her eyes was the assassin before her. The other party's methods were astonishingly sharp. There was no hesitation at all. The sword in his hand landed everywhere, aiming for vital points. Under such circumstances, it was extremely difficult for Bailey Hongzhuang to persist for even a moment. Whoosh! Whoosh! Bailey Hongzhuang stumbled back several steps. Her clothes had long been stained red with blood. She looked disheveled and miserable. However, her eyes were as sharp as a wolf's. They were tragic and persistent. Faced with Bailey Hongzhuang in this state, the assassin's heart was shaken. The opponent was clearly no match for him. Yet, she had been able to hold on for so long. This was already a miracle. Slash! The sharp blade pierced Bailey Hongzhuang's body, drawing a red line of blood. Master! Chapter 44:16. White Lion. Fresh blood blurred Bailey Hongzhuang's vision. She could no longer tell if it was blood or tears that had blurred her vision. His heart ached to the extreme at this moment, and he felt as if he couldn't even breathe. The opponent was too terrifying and cold-blooded, causing one to break down from the bottom of their heart. The white lion fell in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Its eyes were fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang. Even at its last moment, it still wanted to imprint its master's face deeply into its heart. Die! The man's eyes were cold and sharp. He stabbed the sharp blade in his hand without hesitation. However, at that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang felt the dark aura beneath her feet suddenly become denser. A ray of light flashed across her eyes, which were filled with despair and agony. She used all her strength to run wildly backward. The opponent clearly did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang to still want to escape at this point in time. However, given her current state, how could she escape? It's useless. The man shook his head. This kind of resistance was a joke to him. However, just as the man was about to chase after Bailey Hongzhuang, the ground beneath his feet suddenly sank. A huge force grabbed his leg and mercilessly tore it off. Ah! The man let out an earth-shattering, blood-curdling scream. He never expected that a pit would suddenly appear beneath his feet. A numbing number of skeletons quietly appeared from the pit and tore the man's body into pieces before he could defend himself. In a short while, the man had disappeared without a trace. The other three assassins couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this scene. This sudden turn of events was completely beyond their expectations. Even though they had lost one person, Bailey Hongzhuang must have lost her life since she had entered the sea of skeletons. However, they did not notice that a pair of blood-red, eerie eyes were staring fixedly at them from within the sea of skeletons. She would definitely avenge today's grudge. When Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiu had been besieged by the Di family's cultivators, their expressions changed abruptly. There are so many people in the Di family. How could you leave the two of them there? After being reprimanded by Wang Yanhan, everyone's gazes immediately turned to Xiao Rojin. It was Xiao Rojin who had suggested coming back. Noticing the change in everyone's expression, Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao couldn't help but look at Xiao Rojin with sharp gazes. This is a personal grudge between them. Why should we get involved? Xiao Rojin spread out her hands and asked innocently. Obviously, she did not feel that there was anything wrong with her approach. Hearing this, Wang Yanhan looked at Xiao Rojin in disgust. He knew very well that this woman must be eager for something to happen to little junior sister and the others. Let's go take a look. Right now, he didn't have time to settle this score with Xiao Rojin. He had to hurry over. He only hoped that junior brother Di and little junior sister could hold on until they arrived. After Wang Yanhan and Yi Haomiao set off, Lu Yan also rushed over with people. Even though he had not interacted with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiu for a long time, they were already friends. Furthermore, they were from the same sect. How could they watch outsiders bully their fellow disciples? However, when Wang Yanhan and the others arrived, they did not see Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Jiu. Chapter 44:17. At the thought of this possibility, Wang Yanhan could not help but clench his fists tightly under his sleeves. No way. He did not believe that junior brother Di and little junior sister would die in the hands of the Di family. Guilt, regret, self-blame. Wang Yanhan's heart was filled with all sorts of emotions. In fact, He was the one who had killed Di Wentao. If it had not been for him, little junior sister and the rest would not have had any interaction with the D family. If they had died in the hands of the D family, he would never forgive himself. Yi Haomiao's face was also filled with anxiety. According to what they said, this should be the place. Why are there no traces? Wan Yanhan, come over and take a look. At that moment, LVN's voice was heard from short distance away. Wan Yanhan and Yi Haomiao immediately rushed over to where LVN was. However, their expressions changed when they saw the corpse on the ground. I remember this face. He is a cultivator from the D family, Yi Haomiao said hurriedly. LVN and the rest could not help but look at each other. Since a cultivator from the D family has died, this proves that things are not as bad as we thought. Let's go and take a look nearby. Okay, everyone spread out and searched the surroundings. However, what happened next left them dumbfounded. We found the corpse of a cultivator from the D family here. We found Avao's corpse here. We found D Sudan's corpse here. In a short time, a group of people found the 6 corpses of the D family not far away from this place. There were only 6 cultivators from the D family that we saw previously. Now they are all dead. The cultivator who had gone back to inform Wan Yanhan had a complicated expression on his face. Could Di Beichen and the rest have killed all the cultivators from the D family? If that was the case, the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen was too terrifying. The D family had not wanted to kill them. They were the ones who had exterminated the D family. No way. Wan Yanhan shook his head with a solemn expression. If little junior sister and the others killed them, they should have returned by now. It's impossible for there to be no news at all. Lu Yin nodded his head solemnly. Indeed, based on the distribution of the D family's cultivators' corpses, it is obvious that they fled in 2 different directions. However, they were caught up and killed. There are only 2 of them, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. It's impossible for them to do this. Wan Yanhan, look, there's blood here. Yi Haomiao's voice suddenly sounded. Looking at the blood trail on the ground, his heart gradually sank. Wan Yanhan and the others quickly rushed over. As expected, these bloodstains were left behind when they were fleeing. Look, there are footprints on the bloodstains. Everyone took a closer look, and it was indeed as he said. It seems that there should be a 3rd group of people here. These bloodstains could only belong to little junior sister and her group. Wan Yanhan's expression was complicated. He couldn't understand why they would encounter another group of people here. Let's search nearby again. They might not have gone far, Yi Haomiao said. Based on the situation of the bloodstains, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Sudong's situation was definitely not good. They had to speed up. Let's search in the direction of the bloodstains, Lu Yin said in a low voice. Chapter 44:18. However, as the group continued to move forward, they realized that there was an army of skeletons in the distance. The black mass of skeletons emitted a heart-palpitating fluctuation. Ever since they had encountered the army of skeletons, everyone had a lingering fear. Now that they had seen it again, almost everyone wanted to run away. Just as they were hesitating, they suddenly saw 2 black figures sweep past them. The other party's speed was extremely fast, but they were certain that the 2 figures they had seen were not fake. Who were these 2 people? Could Beichen's accident be related to the 2 of them? Yi Haomiao looked in the direction in which the 2 had left. The 2 of them had suddenly appeared here and were dressed in black. Even their faces were covered. It was obvious that they were going to do something shameful. Wan Yanhan also looked at the 2 of them. Although he did not have any evidence, he was almost certain that the 2 of them had done it. However, by the time they wanted to chase after them, the 2 of them had already disappeared without a trace. They're so fast. They're definitely very powerful. Yi Haomiao stared in horror at the backs of the 2 men in black. In the blink of an eye, their figures had disappeared from sight. This speed was simply shocking. That means that little junior sister and the others should be in the army of skeletons. Wan Yanhan turned around and looked at the army of skeletons. Based on the way the 2 men in black had fled, he could see that they were in a sorry state. It must have been because of the army of skeletons. Thinking about it, This was the only possibility that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were in the army of skeletons. Little junior sister. Wang Yanhan immediately called out loudly at the thought of this. Di Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang. Everyone called out to her, but unfortunately, there was no response. Seeing this, everyone looked at each other. Although no one said anything, they knew very well that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' chances of survival were very small. First, they had been pursued and seriously injured. Now, they had fallen into the army of skeletons. It was simply impossible for them to survive. I'll go in and look for them. Wang Yanhan refused to believe it. They had clearly been fine together. They had only been separated for a moment, and the two of them had fallen. How could anyone accept this? Seeing Wang Yanhan's action, Lu Yin and Yi Haomiao hurriedly stopped him. Are you crazy? With so many skeletons, let alone you, even if all of us went there, we would still die. If they're alive, I want to see them. If they're dead, I want to see their corpses. If I don't find them, I definitely won't give up. Wang Yanhan's expression was resolute. He absolutely couldn't accept such an outcome. Wang Yanhan, calm down, Yi Haomiao shouted. If they were really surrounded by the army of skeletons, nothing would be left. Have you forgotten what happened last night? Wang Yanhan was stunned when he heard these words. Indeed, with the terrifying strength of the skeleton army, he would be torn to pieces in a short period of time once he was surrounded. They died because of me. Wang Yanhan stared at Yi Haomiao, his voice filled with hysteria. Little junior sister and little junior sister had gotten into such trouble because of him, now that he was alive and well. But little junior sister and little junior sister had fallen. How was he going to face them? Chapter 44:19. Pain. A heart-wrenching pain. She felt as if her entire body had been crushed by a giant beast. There was not a single part of her body that did not hurt. A burning sensation spread throughout her body as if someone was calling out to her. However, no matter how hard she tried, she could not open her eyes. Master, wake up. Bailey Hongzhuang's body was shaken. She used all her strength to open her eyes. Xiaohei was calling out to her anxiously. When she saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had opened her eyes, Xiaohei's teary eyes lit up with joy. Master, how are you? Nothing must happen to you. Bailey Hongzhuang's mind went blank for a moment as she stared at Xiaohei. Then, her memories quickly returned. Assassin, pursuit, a fight to the death. Scene after scene flashed across her mind. In the end, she stopped at the scene of Di Beichun and Bai Shi who had been stabbed. Her expression changed, and she immediately tried to sit up. However, the moment she moved, the heart-wrenching pain caused her to frown. Her body felt as if it had been filled with lead. It was extremely difficult for her to move. Even though her body was in great pain, she insisted on sitting up. She then turned to look at Di Beichun and Bai Shi. They were lying there without any reaction. Di Beichun, Bai Shi, Bailey Hongzhuang called out to them. However, they still did not move. It was as if they could not hear Bailey Hongzhuang's voice at all. Bailey Hongzhuang's heart trembled when she saw this. Her bright eyes revealed a trace of fear. She clearly remembered that Di Beichun and Bai Shi had taken a blow for her. She was afraid that they would leave her just like that. Master, they're not dead yet. Xiaohei's eyes were filled with tears. They did not know why they would encounter such a calamity out of the blue. Almost everyone was on the verge of death. After listening to Xiaohei's words, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart calmed down a little, but she was still worried. She knew very well how serious her injuries were at that time. If she didn't receive treatment in time, it was hard to say whether she could survive. She wanted to stand up, but she had no strength. Therefore, she could only use all her strength to crawl to Di Beichun and White Lion's side. She placed her hand on Di Beichun's pulse. That weak pulse had almost disappeared, but the faint fluctuations made her understand that Di Beichun was still alive. However, judging from his pulse, his injuries were far more serious than he had imagined. She quickly took out a medicinal pill from her bosom and fed it to Di Beichun before looking at Bai Shi at the side. The white lion's fur was now dyed red with blood, and it no longer had its majestic appearance. There was a huge hole in its stomach, and blood was flowing uncontrollably from the wound. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly took out some medicine and sprinkled it on Baisher's wound, then began to bandage it. However, the blood was flowing too quickly. She could not stop it, even when she tried to cover it with her hands. Her hands were covered in blood. Bailey Hongzhuang's vision was blurry. She was on the verge of breaking down, and she wanted to cry out loud. However, she managed to calm down in the end. She understood that she could not break down now. She had to think a way to save them, because if they were no longer around, she would not be able to live either. "Master, don't cry. Let me help you." Xiaohei's lips trembled. Everywhere they looked was a shocking bloodstain. They had never been in such a tragic state before. No matter what, as long as there was still a glimmer of hope, they could not let anything happen to Di Beiqian and White Lion. "All right." Chapter 4420. Lower Realm, Lan Family. Mu Ling Bing's heart clenched in pain, and she couldn't help feeling nervous and uncomfortable. "Yin Xiao, I don't know why, but I'm suddenly very worried. Did something happen to Hong Zhuang and the rest?" Mu Ling Bing hurriedly went to find Lan Yin Xiao. She hadn't felt this way in a long time. She had felt this way when Bailey Hongzhuang was in trouble. She didn't expect to feel this way again today. It truly made her feel uneasy. Lan Yunxiao's expression changed slightly at Mu Lingbing's words. He pondered for a moment before saying, "It can't be. I received a letter from Xiren saying that they went to the upper realm. Moreover, Beichen's father is already looking for them. Logically speaking, they should be in the D family by now. There shouldn't be any problems. Could it be that the D family doesn't accept Hong Zhuang?" Mu Lingbing looked anxious. She had never thought that there would be such a problem before she knew about the upper realm. However, she couldn't help but worry after learning that Di Beiqian was the young master of an aristocratic family in the upper realm. After all, not all families didn't care about status. "It can't be." Lan Yunxiao shook his head. "You've seen Beichen's father. He's not that kind of person." Seeing Lan Yunxiao's confident expression, Mu Lingbing relaxed a little. However, she still couldn't help but pace back and forth. "I keep feeling that something has happened. We should go to the upper realm as soon as possible. Hong Zhuang is alone there with no one to rely on. It's too dangerous. Understand your worries." Lan Yunxiao pulled Mu Lingbing back. "Hong Zhuang is our only daughter. I'm also very worried about her. Once we break through to the Starlight Realm, we'll immediately head to the upper realm. Is that all right?" Hearing this, Mu Lingbing nodded in satisfaction. All right. With their current situation, they weren't far from the upper realm. Lan Yunxiao's eyes darkened when he saw that Mu Lingbing had finally left in peace. A woman's intuition was always sharper. It was the same situation back then. He could only hope that nothing bad would happen to Hong Zhuang. Unfortunately, in their current situation, they couldn't immediately rush to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen disappeared, Wang Yanhan and the others lost interest in exploring. In fact, after the battle with the skeleton army, everyone was already full of fear of this place. They felt uncomfortable staying here for even a moment longer. After their investigation, they found out that this demonic dragon abyss was the place where the skeleton army gathered. Along the way, they also encountered the cultivators of the Azure Dragon School. However, there wasn't much difference between the two sides. Once they encountered the skeleton army, they would definitely be in an extremely difficult situation. By the time they returned to the Raging Flames Gate, the entire team had shrunk by half. Everyone couldn't help but hang their heads in dejection, completely different from the high-spirited appearance they had when they arrived. After this incident, they finally understood how powerful the dark forces were. As it turned out, the power of darkness that they had always looked down upon and despised was actually so powerful. If a darkness attribute cultivator could find their own inheritance, then their strength would definitely be terrifying when they matured. Wang Yanhan and Yi Hao Miao couldn't help but hope that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beiqian were still alive and that they would have a chance to meet again. Chapter 44:21. That damn D family. If it hadn't been for them, Bei-chun and the others would not have been killed. Wanyan Han could not hide his anger. He could not accept the fact that he had been the cause of all this. Unfortunately, no matter how much he regretted it now, it was useless. Steward Wu was shocked when he heard the news. He had always planned to nurture Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He never thought that they would lose their lives during this training exercise. Chung Zonghao was also depressed when he found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had died. He never thought that such an unforeseen event would happen. He had wanted to build a good relationship with Bailey Hongzhuang and learn the art of inscription patterns from her. Things did not go according to one's wishes. Everything had been arranged properly, but something like this had happened. The happiest person was none other than the vice president of the Holy Light Assembly, Gong Tianfeng. Her future had been affected because of Bailey Hongzhuang. She could not take this lying down. She had thought that she would teach Bailey Hongzhuang a lesson in the future. Now that this trouble had disappeared, it could be considered as helping her to vent her anger. Half a month later, Bailey Hongzhuang had unknowingly stayed in the Chaos Ring for half a month. Bei-chun, how are you feeling? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Bei-chun. Although his face was still pale, it was much better than before. Wifey, I'm fine. Di Bei-chun drank the medicine that Bailey Hongzhuang gave him. The corners of his lips raised into a gentle smile. At the same time, Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also taking care of Bai Shi. We were really lucky this time. If the skeleton army had not appeared at the right time, I'm afraid we would have been finished. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but sigh. This could be considered as the heavens helping them. Otherwise, she would not have been a match for those assassins. Actually, this was not entirely luck. My wife, you have been using the power of light to attract them. Di Bei-chun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. The tragedy from back then was still vivid in his mind. One wrong move, and they would have been completely annihilated. I wonder who those assassins are. We have never offended such an existence. Why would they want to assassinate us? Bailey Hongzhuang's brows wrinkled. She had never understood this point. Even when I asked them at the last moment, they did not reveal any information. Hearing this, Di Bei-chun's face sank. Until now, we still don't know if they are coming for us or the Di family. The other party came out of nowhere and wanted to kill all of us without any explanation. It's really hard to determine their target. From the beginning to the end, the other party had never said who they wanted to kill, but one thing was for sure. The person they wanted to kill was among them. So far, there are only 3 people in the upper realm who could have attacked us. The first is the Di family, but we can rule that out now. The second is Gong Tianfeng. Our appearance has affected her development. She hates us, so it's not strange that she wants to attack us. As for the third possibility, it's the Xiao family. Di Bei-chun's eyes flickered with wisdom. Based on their current experience, there is no fourth possibility apart from these 3. Chapter 44:22. According to this judgment, it's most likely to be the Xiao clan, Di Bei-chun said in a low voice. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Bei-chun looked at each other and immediately understood. It's very likely that Xiao Rojin has sent news of me back to the Xiao clan. They think that my appearance will affect their holy maiden who's about to succeed the throne. That's not strange. It's been many years since the upper realm has seen a light attribute cultivator with full talent. It's said that the holy maiden who's about to succeed the throne isn't really at full talent. On the contrary, you're really at full talent. Once she sends this news back, the Xiao clan will most likely make such a decision. Di Bei-chun said in a low voice. With the Xiao clan's strength, it was definitely not a problem for them to send out such an assassin. Moreover, the other party's cautious approach was indeed very similar to the style of an aristocratic family. No wonder Xiao Rojin wanted to take the other cultivators away first. Perhaps this is the reason. Xiao Hei's gaze suddenly sharpened. I knew that Xiao Rojin wasn't easy to deal with. She's really despicable. Once the opponent is confirmed, we'll definitely take revenge. Her pitch-black phoenix eyes flashed with thick, killing intent. When she thought about how Beichun and Baishur had almost left her forever because of this matter, the killing intent in her heart boiled and couldn't dissipate at all. If others don't offend me, I won't offend them. Since the other party had bullied me, I'll definitely take revenge. Although the other party was very strong and they were no match for them now. As long as they were given a certain amount of time, she believed that they would definitely be able to take revenge. Deep Beichun also narrowed his eyes. His thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. They would definitely take revenge. This time, they were beaten to the point where they couldn't fight back, but it would definitely not happen again. Beichun, you should rest for a while. Your injuries are very deep. Although they're almost healed now, you've still damaged your vitality. You need to rest well. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Deep Beichun with concern. The sword strike that he had blocked for her was too deep. Furthermore, after such a long time, he had lost too much blood and his vitality was greatly damaged. In the past few days, although she had thought of ways to help Beichun heal, she still had to rest well. Deep Beichun nodded slightly and said gently and concernedly, "Your injuries aren't light either. You should also rest well. Most of my injuries were superficial, but they're all healed now. Taking care of you and White Lion is the most important thing for me now." Then, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at White Lion's condition. She had to admit that White Lion was indeed a beast king. Back then, he had suffered such serious injuries that she almost believed that White Lion would not survive. However, White Lion's recovery ability was also very strong. Now, his life was no longer in danger. It was just that he could not use force for the time being. White Lion, you have to rest well too. You've suffered great injuries this time, so you can't move too much. It'll be bad if you aggravate your wounds, understand? Don't worry, Master. Bailey Hongzhuang stroked White Lion's warm and soft fur. She still remembered how White Lion had used all his strength to hug her and block an attack for her. It was also this warm. She swore that she would use her life to protect them. Something like this would not be allowed to happen a second time. Xiao Bai and Xiao Xuanzi were both injured. However, their injuries were not as serious as Di Beichun's and White Lion's. They had already recovered. Chapter 44-23. 7 days later. After confirming that Di Beichun was safe and sound, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others came out of the Chaos Ring. What they saw was still a black world. Bailey Hongzhuang did not find it strange. Back then, she had escaped into the Chaos Ring in the midst of the skeleton army. In addition, there were teleportation arrays everywhere in the training grounds. As for where they had been teleported to, she was not sure at the moment. I wonder where we are now. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. The environment where the dark energy gathered was always the same. It was very difficult to determine the direction in such a place. Go in one direction and sense that the dark energy in that direction is the weakest. We should be able to find the way out. Di Beichun said. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. This was indeed a good idea. Senior Brother Wan Yin and the others must be very worried about our inexplicable disappearance this time. Bailey Hongzhuang pursed her red lips. Just thinking about it, she could guess that Wan Yin Han and Yi Haomiao must be worried about them. I'm afraid everyone must think that we are already dead. Di Beichun chuckled. Not to mention others, even he himself almost thought that he was dead. When we go back, they must be very surprised. Just thinking about it is interesting. Her elegant red lips curled up slightly. Her pitch-black eyes flashed with a bright light. It was a blessing to have escaped death this time. However, if these assassins were really sent by the Shao family, once we go back, they will know that we are still alive. At that time, I'm afraid that they will attack again. Di Beichun's eyes darkened. His handsome face was grave. They had to consider this problem. Let's disguise ourselves before going back. At least we have to confirm whether it is them or not. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were sharp. If it was really the Shao family, no matter how powerful the other party was, she would think of ways to make them unhappy. Di Beichun nodded. Okay. On this point, their thoughts were the same. Revenge was a dish best served cold, but at the very least, they had to figure out who their opponent was. The two of them continued forward. Their location was clearly rather deep. They walked for 4 hours without encountering anyone. "Master, look, there's someone in front." Xiaobai pointed not far away, her eyes filled with surprise. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other and quickly walked over. A man was lying in a pool of blood. There was a ghastly wound on his back, and his clothes were completely dyed red. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around. There was obviously no one else in the vicinity. However, she noticed a trail of blood coming from afar. It was obvious that the man had fled all the way here. It was just that after arriving here, he was already exhausted, so he fainted here. "Master, is this person still alive?" Xiaobai was secretly speechless. With such a terrifying injury, he had almost lost all his blood. Bailey Hongzhuang took his pulse and said, "He must have taken some pills before he fainted. Although his injuries are very serious, he is still alive. Wake him up, and we should know where this place is," Di Beichun slowly said. Chapter 44-24. After Bailey Hongzhuang had bandaged the most serious wound on the man's back, they then turned the man over. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This was undoubtedly an extremely handsome man. His facial features were as distinct as if they had been carved out. His angular face was unusually handsome. Even though his face was stained with blood and he looked a little wretched, he was still so handsome that it was impossible to ignore him. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichun next to her and unexpectedly felt that the two of them were somewhat similar. "Beichun, I didn't think that there would be a man as handsome as you in this world." Xiaobai was also astonished. Ever since she had met Di Beichun, she had never seen a man more handsome than him. Many men looked quite handsome, but they paled in comparison to Di Beichun. She did not expect that this man in front of her was not inferior to Di Beichun in any way. Di Beichun looked at the man in front of him. His deep eyes lit up slightly, and the corners of his lips curled into a faint smile. "Then in your opinion, who is more handsome between me and him?" "In my opinion." Bailey Hongzhuang dragged her voice and looked meaningfully at Di Beichun. Just as Di Beichun's expression gradually turned serious, she suddenly smiled and said, "Of course it's you." Di Beichun raised his eyebrows slightly. "Fortunately, this man is not a threat to me." "What if he is a threat?" Bailey Hongzhuang asked back. "Then I'll take you away. I won't save him." The man's injuries were very serious. Even after Bailey Hongzhuang had helped him apply medicine and treat his wounds, the man was still unconscious. Xiao Bai's figure grew bigger and carried the man on his back as they continued forward. It was not until the next day that the man slowly woke up. When the man opened his eyes and saw Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, his expression was obviously sluggish for a moment. He looked at them in confusion, obviously unable to distinguish the situation for a moment. However, when he noticed the wounds on his body that had been bandaged, he understood what had happened. "I am Di Xiaofeng. Thank you both for saving me." The man clasped his hands together. Even though this action tore open the wounds on his back, he still insisted. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun also smiled and clasped their hands together. "It's fate that we met, young master. You don't have to be so courteous. I will never forget the kindness of saving my life." The man's expression was serious. "I will remember this kindness in my heart and will definitely repay the two of you in the future. You're too kind." Bailey Hongzhuang took out some water and handed it to Di Xiaofeng. "You've been unconscious for so long and lost so much blood. You must be thirsty." Hearing this, Di Xiaofeng's lips were dry and his throat was smoking. He was indeed thirsty. He took the water and thanked them before gulping it down. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but look at each other. They didn't expect this man to also have the surname Di. It was really strange. This was already the second cultivator with the surname Di that they had met so far. Speaking of which, it really wasn't an ordinary fate. "Young Master Di, I see that the wounds on your body aren't caused by the skeletons. Why are you here alone and heavily injured? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Di Xiaofeng's expression immediately darkened. His gaze was deep and angry. I came here to find an opportunity, but I don't know why I was assassinated. The other party had a lot of people. Even if I did my best to kill all of them, I couldn't help but be injured. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.